The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Friday, it's the last day of August, and we're going to be with you for the next 3 hours talking about topics having to do with autism and how you and I can be the most efficient, most effective members of a team working with a child on the autism spectrum, helping them to reach their fullest potential. That's what we're about. My phone is already making noises. It's going to be that kind of day. Can't you already tell? Don't you feel it in the air? It's that kind of a day. It's not Friday the 13th, but there's that little bit of a feel to it. So we're a live show, so things happen and we take them as they go, right? But as I said, it's so important, whether you're a parent, teacher, or practitioner, I know how important it is to you that you show up in a child's life and that you help them, you give them the tools by using tools that you've learned yourself that help them to reach their fullest potential. Sometimes it's outside of our experience, the kind of things we have to do. Sometimes it's counterintuitive. Sometimes it's so simplistic that we literally go, duh, why didn't I think of that? But sometimes we're too overtired, sometimes we're too overwhelmed, and sometimes there's just stuff that hasn't occurred to us. That happens to me all the time. It just doesn't occur to me. So we talk about those things and we bring experts in to talk to you, to help you to get hooked up with the information that you need. Everything that we do here, when we answer questions, it's all free. This is a free service. And it's really driven by what you want. What do you want to see more information about? What are you interested in hearing more about? And there's lots of different ways that you can tell us. So let's talk about some of the different ways that you can be in contact with us. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, then you will see that there's a box there and I'm talking to you, and next to that there's a box that says Shannon is answering, and the box below that is empty right now, but it's active. So if you type something in there, and you can type gobbledygook just to see if it works, hit enter and it shows up magically right here on my screen. So that's a way that you can be conversing with me, and when I have an expert in here, you can be asking them questions, and you can ask a question even if there's no expert here, because I will chase down an expert to answer the question, whether it be today or another day. We do have access, to experts on your behalf, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So ask away, and we'll try to get you pointed in the direction that you need to go in. Now, of course, all of our children are different. There is no such thing as a cookie-cutter approach to autism that works, right? We're all reminded on a daily basis that our kids are individual, and I don't know about you, but I'm always about trying to get people to see my child for who he is, not the label, right? See my kid, not the label autism, because my child and your child are always going to be different in many different ways, and the amount of progress that everybody makes is different on this journey. But the one thing that we want to make sure we're all aware of is that there's progress available for all of our children, all of them, no matter what age and no matter what skill ability, no matter how profoundly they're affected by autism, there is progress available for all of them. And that's what we're trying to focus on. So, but what areas do you want to know about? Let us know and we'll point you in the right direction. We're not giving child-specific information here because that would be a disservice to your child. But there's a lot of information that we can give you to help you to be able to figure out what is going to work for your home and your child, or your classroom and your student. Okay, so Okay, and if you are watching us and it says rebroadcast, then you will see that that box should not be active. Sometimes it still is, and I can't figure that out. But if it says rebroadcast, there are other ways to get a hold of us, and this holds true for if you're watching us on any other medium besides autism-live.com. So there is our email address, and you can talk to us. You send us an email. We'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. We'll talk about it on the next available live show. We'll give you a typewritten response. You can also phone in to us. We have a phone line that patches directly into the studio. If you want to be talking to somebody live on the air, you can be. Or if you just want to leave a message, if it's during the weekend and you want to say, hey, I need to see another show about pica. This is happening in our household, and I want you to have somebody on talking about that. Or let's talk about bedtime rituals, or let's talk about toilet training, or whatever it is. Your child's engaging in self-injurious behavior, let's talk about it. So leave a message for us if we're not here, but if you'd like to talk to somebody live during the show time, you can. You can do that on our phone line, but you can also do it on our Skype line as well, especially for those of you who are international viewers. We encourage you to Skype in with us. We are on every morning. Right now we're on from 9 to noon, but starting next Tuesday, when we come back after Labor Day, we're moving to a 2-hour format. We think that we can provide the same amount of information for you in a 2-hour period. We're not losing a thing, but we're just going to cut some of the fat. So we're going to start at 10 o'clock. It's a little experiment. You'll write into us and tell us, and if you hate it, you can say, I need that third hour. Let us know. But that starts on Tuesday from 10 to noon. You can Skype in with us. That's Pacific Standard Time. We're in the Los Angeles area, so Pacific Standard Time. Write into us. Tell us what you think, but Skype in during that time, and we're happy to have you on with us during that time. All right. You can also get in touch with us via Facebook, and this is a wonderful way for us to interact with you. I've had more problems this week with Facebook, and it's my computer system. It's not Facebook, but my computer system is not loving the Facebook thing this week. But we're getting that fixed, and hopefully that's going to be up and running here this morning so that I'll be able to chat with you via Facebook. But what I especially love when you guys talk on Facebook is you talk to each other, and I love that. I love when you hold each other up, and when you see somebody writes in to answer the question of the day, and they say, I'm just in a bad place, and I see you guys swarm like mother ducks to take care of the person and remind them that it's not always going to be this way, that just because it's that way today doesn't mean that tomorrow is going to be that way. And I really appreciate that you guys do that for each other. It really warms my heart. And by the way, you can do that as well on Twitter. We love to tweet with you. We love for you guys to tweet and follow us, and we will follow you. It's that kind of thing. So check us out on Twitter, and there's our Twitter. What is that? Our Twitter handle. I don't even know what the words are for Twitter. Yeah, Twitter handle, our tweet handle. Okay, so there it is. So you can talk to us on Twitter. I mentioned earlier that there are other ways to watch Autism Live. And of course, if you want to watch us live, the only place that you can actually do that is autism-live.com. And as I said, that'll be from 10 to noon starting next Tuesday. And but if you can't watch us during that time, and I know a lot of you have OT and other things that you have to do during that time, but we want you to be able to access the information in the way that makes sense for you. So we have several different ways that you can do that, of course, for free. I shouldn't say of course, but it is for free. So there you go. One of them is on blip.tv. You can be watching us there, and it's sort of like your personal DVR system for Autism Live. We have our own channel. You can go back and put in a date of a show that you want to watch, or you can put in a person that you want to see, or a topic that you want to see, and search it on blip.tv. You can fast forward, rewind, pause it, so that when somebody comes to the door or your child needs attention, you pause it, and there you are. Pick it up when you can. Now, you can also do that on YouTube, and one of the things that I love about our YouTube channel, it's got all those things that are on Blip TV, but once you watch something, if you want to share it, you can. If you want to share it to your Facebook, if you see something that's particularly good information, or you want to share it with your child's teacher, or you want to share it with your ABA provider, you want to share it with your mother-in-law, whoever it is that you need to share it with, or just share it on Facebook. You can do that easily when you watch our clips on our YouTube channel, which is right there. And And you can also download us for free on iTunes. How lovely is that? Download it for free. You can archive the episodes on your iTunes, which is great. And that is picture and sound. So you can be watching just like you are here. And we're also on Ustream. So that's just another way that you can watch us for free. You have to love that, right? Okay. I mentioned that this is a subject, autism, very near and dear to my heart, but I always like to remind you guys, I am not an autism expert. So don't forget that. Like that's the main thing I want you to know. I am not an autism expert. I am not an ABA expert. We talk a lot here about ABA, applied behavior analysis. I call it the miracle in my living room, the autism miracle in my living room, because we were able to, my thing is I'm a parent, and like a lot of you out there, and I'm a former school teacher. I was a college professor and a school teacher. And my son was diagnosed. I waited a long time to have my child. And finally, was blessed with this beautiful baby boy who was just perfect in every way, much to my amazement. And then we had a slow descent into autism. He had the regressive kind of autism. He was already speaking in sentences, and it just went away piece by piece, like sand through my fingers. Really, probably the most horrifying experience that I've ever gone through, just watching my son slip away and not knowing what to do. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what to do. I did not know what to do. And went to the pediatrician, and she said, wait it out. It's fine. He's fine. He'll be talking in paragraphs any day now. He was already talking in sentences. He's fine. And I won't say that autism didn't occur to me, but in my ignorance, I thought that, if a child had, I didn't know about regressive autism. Let's say that. I thought if a child had autism, they just never spoke. Once my child was speaking, I was like, oh, well, we dodged that bullet. No, we didn't. And by the time I was able to get my son into a developmental pediatrician to have him diagnosed, he was basically no functional communication skills at that point. And lucky for me, and lucky for my family, and especially lucky for my son, we, the fates intervened, and we met people who told us about ABA, and we saw their child and said, okay, this is amazing. And right after his 3rd birthday, we started intensive ABA therapy with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Now, ABA, we talk about it a lot here because it's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. And by the way, that's not new. The first study that showed how effective ABA could be came out in 1987. Now, unfortunately, the second study to show how effective ABA could be didn't come out until, I think it was 2003. I might be wrong about that, but we'll ask Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. And I think then from 2003 to now, there have been hundreds of studies that have shown how effective ABA is. So my son was diagnosed in 2003, and in that respect, I got kind of lucky, because for those of you who your children were diagnosed before that, while people knew and people were doing ABA, I just don't think it had the attention and the press that it has now, which still isn't enough, right? But ABA is effective, and it's effective for all of our kids. And what do I mean by effective? We're going to see progress. And that has been scientifically shown to be true, that all of our kids, so no matter what age your child is, I know you've been told there's a window. I know that. And I know that, those of you who have older children, I know you feel like you missed a bus. I'm going to sit here and tell you, you did not. You did not miss the bus. The bus is still here. Every day that you wait to start ABA is one more day that you have to catch up on, and that's the bus you don't want to miss. Okay, so when we talk about early intervention, I really want you to hear me say early is now. Wherever you are. If your child is 28, it is not too late for them to see progress. Yes, you have more to catch up on. I feel you. I hear you. That's sad, and I know you got some grief over that, but I'm telling you that there is progress to be had today. Please don't wait. We're here to help you to figure out what you need to do, and I know that a part of the process is funding. We're here to help you with that too, by helping you to get hooked up with different sources to figure it out. It's not the same for everybody. Just like what needs to happen with our kids is not the same. What we need to do to get the funding to be able to have ABA, it's different. Unfortunately, if you're in South Carolina, I have to tell you, you know, one direction to go in, and if you're in Utah, I got to tell you another direction to go in, right? And if you're in India, it's an entirely different thing. But I will tell you that there's hope and help for all of you. That there's a way, if you want to do this, there is a way that you can do it. And I want to help you to figure that out. So we do talk about ABA a lot. It is not the only thing we talk about. We talk about emotionally getting through this. We talk about what we have to do to keep ourselves healthy, to keep our kids healthy, how we're going to pay for this journey, right? And we talk about, I'm just seeing there's a question. The question that came in just now, I'm going to put it up on the screen so that you can all see. It's a great question, by the way. Question came in, Shannon, did your son's diagnosis change any of your other relationships? For me, it changed how I feel about every person in my life besides my child. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say yeah to that. I think that my son's diagnosis changed my relationship with the world. And in some ways, you know, on some days, not for the better, but in a lot of ways, long term for the better. How I look at the world, my relationship with myself changed. Can I be completely honest about that? And quite honestly, my relationship with my child changed because it needed to. It absolutely needed to. I needed to come to acceptance of, just like I'm saying that we want for the rest of the world to look at our kids and see our kids, I had to see my child. And can I tell you, on a day-to-day basis, I have to take a breath and see my child for who he is, not who my expectation is, who I want him to be, who I thought he might be. Every day I have to let him tell me, and I have to be the clean slate. And that is not easy for me on a day-to-day basis, but I hopefully at some point in the 24-hour period, I find the way to it, and find the way to love who he is. He reveals himself to me on a daily basis, and he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible, but I can't make assumptions. And what was happening yesterday, you know, isn't necessarily what's going to happen today. So I have to be a clean slate. He's growing, but it changed my relationship with a lot of people. You know, I've talked about on this show that sometimes you see people that step up in your life and you go, wow, I didn't see who you were before, but I see who you are now because you're here, man, and that's everything in the world. And then there are other people who just can't do it. They can't be on this journey with us. And, you know, and worse than that, I mean, that's sad, right? But it's not the end of the world. And worse than that, there are some people who not only can't be on this journey with you, but they feel like they got to make it harder. And I know that they're well-intentioned, or that they have some sort of, there's a reason for it, right? Every behavior has some sort of paycheck. And I don't necessarily think that they want to make our lives miserable, but man, they have the ability to, right? Over the years, I try to make peace with that on a day-to-day basis and say, okay, that's your deal. It's not my deal. I'm not getting caught up in it. Some days I'm better at it, and other days I'm not. But that's why we are here together, because you help me, and hopefully I can be of some help to you. Okay, we're in a little bit of a flux with a guest that we were hoping to have on at 10:20, and I'll be honest, and I know, Mike, that you're watching right now because I see you're sending me messages, and I'm wondering whether we should postpone. So I'm going to wait during the break, Mike, and hopefully we're going to have an opportunity to talk to you during the break to see whether it's right for you today or whether we need to postpone. So that's my message to Mike. In any case, it is time for us to do the jargon of the day. This is the time of day where we take on one word, one phrase, one anagram, and try to figure out what in the hey nani nani they're talking about when the experts are talking to us about our children. All this week, we've been talking about different kinds of reinforcement, And why we want to be clear on reinforcement. Just to go back, reinforcement is the thing that we deliver as a consequence that makes the child or the adult or whoever we're doing ABA with want to do it again. We know that in order for any behavior to happen on a regular basis, it has to be rewarding in some way. We've talked about this before, that everything you and I do, you see this on Dr. Phil. If you watch Dr. Phil, somebody's doing something and he says, "Why are you doing that?" They say, "I don't know." And he goes, "Okay, but if you did know, why?" Because I'll tell you what, there has to be a reason. There's always a reason for any behavior we do over and over and over again. Okay, great. When we know that, then we can use that to change behaviors that we want to see less of. Stop giving it the paycheck, right? That's very simplistic, but that's what we do with our kids. We don't want to see them banging their head on the floor. We stop giving them the paycheck for it. That was way oversimplified, but that's literally, you know, if we pare it all down, that's what we do. But how about behaviors we want to see more of? Like we want to see more language. We want more functional communication. We want more eye contact. Can we reverse this equation and give it a paycheck? You betcha we can. And that's what reinforcement is. It's the paycheck that we give. And sometimes the paycheck comes in different ways and in different, so we've been talking about the different ways for reinforcement. So today, this will all make more sense. As you see, today's phrase is operant conditioning, because that's what we're doing with ABA, operant conditioning. So what does this mean? Okay, we see the process. This is the actual definition. The process by which an operant response is brought under stimulus control by virtue of presenting reinforcement or punishment contingent upon the occurrence of the operant response. Right? Okay. So let's look at the working definition, because this helps me not even a little. Okay, so operant condition is using reinforcement to increase desired behaviors. Now, the part of it that we've taken out of this that's really kind of important is that usually it's contingent upon a certain behavior happening. Now, yesterday we saw non-contingent reinforcement. That was our jargon for the day. But usually in operant condition, the child behaves in a certain way and then they get the paycheck. Okay, which is different from classical conditioning. I'm going to get myself in trouble here because I'm not a psychology major. But classical conditioning was like the Pavlovian dogs, and they rang the bell and they were creating something happening because they were just conditioning it over and over again. Operant conditioning is we're encouraging a behavior to happen and then we're reinforcing it. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So we're taking this equation of if any time we do a behavior over and over and over again, it's because we get a paycheck, then we're taking and creating these moments in which we're going to have the behavior happen and then we're going to deliver the paycheck so that we see the behavior happen more and more and more. That's operant conditioning. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. Just hang on to the idea that anytime our child does a behavior that we want to do, we're going to give it a paycheck. And anytime they're doing a behavior that we don't want them to do, we're not going to give them the paycheck. Now, in that instance, you got to figure out what the paycheck is, and that may require professional help. But for right now, just understand the concept. We want to give paychecks to the kind of behaviors we want to see more of, and we don't want to give paychecks to the behaviors we don't want to see. It's much more complicated than that, but that's the basic nutshell of it, okay? All right, we always have a question of the day for you. Question of the day is meant to get you thinking, participating, writing in to us on Facebook or on Twitter or to the email. But we've been asking you all this week about how you spend your time. Like, what's your favorite thing to do with your child? What's your favorite thing to do when you're not with your child? What's your favorite guilty pleasure? So to that end, how do you find time to spend with your significant other or friends? Okay. Now, notice that this is a positive assumptive question. It assumes that you have figured that out. Right? And there's a reason for that, because somewhere out there, one of you has figured this out, how you find time without making yourself crazy, and the rest of us want to know. Okay? Because this is one, come on. This is one of the hard things, right? How do you find time to be with your significant other if you're lucky enough to have one? And how do you find time to be with friends, especially when you're in the thick of things with autism and your child is having challenging behaviors? How do you do this? And I will tell you quite honestly that even now, this is, as we're making the transition, my son isn't having intensive ABA anymore. We still do ABA because I still use the skills program at home, but we don't have therapists come into the door anymore. We had that for five, yes, I said 5 years. And I'm grateful for every single minute of it. Was it easy? No. But I'm grateful for every single minute of it. But especially in the first 2 years that he was doing ABA, my ability to connect with other people was severely hampered. It just was. My ability to do anything else, it just was more than I could do. I'm just being honest with you. And if I had it to do over again, I would be less worried about outcome. But that's easy to say, and I would find more time to appreciate the moments if I had it to do over again. But quite honestly, I will tell you, if you're having a hard time doing that, please know I couldn't figure that out in the first 2 years myself. I did make it a priority towards the middle of the second year. I remember very distinctly, because I've said this before on the show, I got to the point, you guys, where I couldn't leave my house. I couldn't leave my house. I was having such anxiety attacks and I could not leave my house. And I got help for it. And I encourage you, if you're in that space, get help for it. I couldn't drive my car, and now I drive to work every morning in some of the worst traffic in the world and commute quite a distance. So I want you to know that there is help. If you're getting yourself painted into a corner, raise your hand and ask for help. And you can email me and ask me. But I did cognitive behavioral therapy, which kind of goes hand in hand with ABA, and it made a world of difference for me. But I remember towards the end of that, as I was starting to get help, we had a big birthday party for my son. And when we have birthday parties, now it's starting to change, but we always invite the child and we invite the parents and families, and so it's not just kids. And it was amazing because I hadn't gotten together with friends in a really long time. Nobody had seen me in a really long time. And I was reminded at that party of the fact that so much of life, it flies by. And we don't remember later on, we remember the big hardships, but we don't remember the day-to-day stuff. We just don't. And the other thing that we remember are the celebrations and the moment when we get together and the moment when we get to laugh with people and connect with other people. And it occurred to me at that party, I remembered thinking, wow, I've been asking my son to be more in the world. And I've been asking him to be more social and to be more conversant. And I always know how important it is for me to model the behavior, and I have not been doing that. He's seen me talking on the phone, but he has not seen me in a while interacting with other people. And it was really one of those clarion moments when you go, okay, all right, it's time to get back to joy. It's time to get back to connection. And we see, and in a little while, we're going to see Jack Riley from the A Word, that in the beginning of his therapy, he's more interested in things than people. And that now at this point in his therapy, he's shifted to being interested in people. And as parents of children on the autism spectrum, we have to find time to do these things. We have to find time to get together with our significant other, and we have to have time to get together with friends, because we're trying to teach our children how to do that. And we have to model it. And of course they say, and I believe it, that the best gift we give our children is to have a loving relationship with our significant other. That's the best role modeling that we can do. It's hard sometimes. It really, really is. And you got to have two people who are in the game and willing to participate, and all the things that go on in a day. It's really, really hard. But that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. It's a lot like everything else in our lives. This journey is hard. Okay. Yeah, we all get it, but it's worth it. It's so, so worth it. I shared with you guys the other day a beautiful blog, a diary of a mom that I hope that you're reading. She also was on Facebook, had a beautiful, beautiful post last night about a conversation with her child. Painful, hard, but it's one of those beautiful, beautiful moments about connection. So I hope that you're one of the people that knows how to find time to spend with your significant other and with friends, and that you write into us on Facebook and give us, the rest of us who struggle with it, clues of how to do it. We all know it's important. We do, but how do we make it happen? So write in. I need the advice as much as anybody else. So there's our question of the day. Take a minute and help us out. Even if it's to say, I'm with you, Shannon, I have no idea. And we'll figure it out together, right? They say if you make it as a priority, then it will happen. And this is a holiday weekend for a lot of us, a 3-day weekend. So maybe there's a little bit more time to find a way to connect, and it doesn't have to be big and huge, whether it's literally sitting in a lawn chair with somebody and having a conversation. Might be the thing to do. Okay, we always have a topic of the day or a topic of the week, and our topic this entire week has been managing stress. And quite honestly, one of the things that I've learned over the years, as stressful as it can be to get people together, it is such a stress reliever once you do get together with people, don't you find? And that it has really, it's one of those glowy effects afterwards, that after I get together with friends, I'm more centered for like a full week. It's one night at a time, and then I'm more centered. So we are going to continue to talk about managing stress today, and how some of the things that we can do to manage our stress and to help manage our children's stress. We know that anxiety is a real part of this journey for a lot of us and for a lot of our children. So, and when we get too stressed out, man, it opens the door for Anxietyville. So we'll talk about what we can do about that. And to that end, we got a bunch of different things happening today. We've got an academic tip coming up for you, a social tip hopefully later on, depending on the schedule. We're going to talk research with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox at 11 o'clock. I'm waiting to hear back whether he's at a meeting, but I'm hoping he's going to be able to join us, because our plan is to talk with him about perspective taking and how we get from point A to point B to help our children to learn perspective taking. Okay, and we may have a special guest for you at 10:20, although we're having some technical issues, so we're trying to figure out whether or not that's going to happen. So stick with us. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes with, I'm just checking, an academic tip. So stick with us. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Grampichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services. We've seen her wake up.
Teacher has some glasses.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm playing with my shapes here. I'm going to show you something. We're talking right now about academic skills, and there are so many things that we want to teach our children in terms of academic skills. And I want to make sure that I'm clear about the fact that we're not talking here about homeschooling. I know that a lot of you do homeschool, but I'm talking here about catching a child up or preparing them for the first 3 years of school, whether it's preschool and kindergarten and first grade, whatever it is that your child might be in 4th grade, but there are some basic skills that you need to go back and pick up that were preschool skills. Don't feel embarrassed about that. Our kids, all kids, neurotypical and otherwise, have gaps, little gaps in their learning where something that they're stronger with or something that they don't have at all. And if we fill those gaps as teachers and as parents, we allow our children to get where they want to go and reach their highest potential that much faster. So when we're talking about teaching academic skills here, we're talking about filling in the gaps, bridging the gaps between knowledge. So you could be working on this kind of thing with a 3-year-old, getting them ready to go to preschool, or you could be working on this with a 5-year-old who's in kindergarten, but really is struggling with some basic concepts. And you could be working on this with an 8-year-old or a 13-year-old who doesn't yet have these concepts. What I'm talking about today is shapes. And I want to be clear that we can work on shapes in several different ways. And I'm going to talk a little bit in terms of a DTT format, which is just discrete trial teaching, but we'll also talk about it from an NET perspective as well, natural environment training. But I think you'll find when you're working, ideally, I think, the best of all possible worlds is to be working on both of those things, plus fluency training, plus precision training, all of those different things, because that's what's going to give our child the global understanding of shapes. And we can apply this to colors, and we can apply this to all kinds of other things. The DTT, NET, do fluency, do precision, and we're going to get there. But a lot of times with children on the autism spectrum, when they haven't picked something up in the traditional format, one great thing that we can do is do this in a DTT setting so that we give that absolute, it's like cutting out a moment at a time and creating a bubble in which that thing we were talking about earlier where something's going to happen, they're going to do the behavior, and then they're going to get a reward. And because we've taken it out and isolated this little bubble of behavior, what happens is if we're successful in isolating the behavior, then the child learns very quickly, oh, I did this behavior and I got rewarded for it. Instead of thinking, well, I did 5 things and I got rewarded for them, I don't know which one was the one that got the reward. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so when we do DTT, making it really clear to the child, you did this, you got a reward, and it's instantaneous, right? Okay, so we're talking about shapes. And what I did literally just during the break, just to show you that you don't have to go buy expensive flashcards if you don't want to, I took a pink piece of paper and I literally just cut out a triangle, a square, and a circle. These are some basic shapes that we would start with. And later on, we would graduate to things like ovals and rectangles and things like that. But basically, you know, for most kids, we're going to start out with this. Now, if they already know one of these, that's great. But let's assume for a second that they don't know any of these three things. So here we have the triangle. And I've given us 3 tips here, and I should have cut out 2 of them. I'm looking at my own thing, and I don't know why I didn't do that. But that's all right. We'll do that. But take a look at the suggestions that I've given you here. I've said to mass trial. So let's talk about what mass. I'm reaching into my bucket here to get out my paper. It's live. We're doing it all live. Okay. So let's talk about what mass trialing is. This is another jargon term, but basically what mass trialing means is we're only going to work on one thing. If we're working on triangle until the child gets it, that's all we're doing. We're not going to alternate between triangle and circle and square. We're not ready for that yet. It's going to seem like it moves really slowly, but it doesn't. It's going to go really quickly. Okay, so here I've got this pink triangle right here. And if I'm going to DTT this with a child, I'm probably going to start with matching because it's a really easy skill. The child doesn't have to have expressive or receptive skills, language skills, to be able to match something. Because I'm going to help them out. I'm going to put the pink triangle on the table, and we start with errorless learning. So there's nothing there on the table. Table is cleared except for the pink triangle. And I give another pink triangle to the child, and I say put with same. Now, does the child understand what put with same means? No. In all likelihood, very likely not, if we're starting with a really early learner. So I'm going to help them out. I'm going to teach them what matching means. Put with same is what I'm going to start with, and I'm going to change that up eventually. But in the beginning, I'm just going to say put with same. Now, the child may have enough receptive language that they go, boom, yay, that's fabulous. They're both triangles, right? But in a lot of cases, the child has no idea what you're talking about. You gave them the pink triangle, and they may start to go put it in their mouth, or they go off the table, they're going to go underneath the table, whatever, right? We're going to try to make this really quick so that we get to the reinforcement really fabulously quick. Quick. So you give the child the pink triangle, and you say put with same, and now we're going to do a physical prompt where we lead them over, and as soon as they let go, we go, yay, that's fabulous, and we give them something that's reinforcing to them. And we're not going to give a huge amount. We're not going to get out the big party pants festival that we're going to have when they actually do it on their own, but we're going to make sure that it's reinforcing, that they want to do it again. So if they love potato chips, you know, you guide the hand over and you go, yay, and they get a little piece of potato chip. Good job. They're both triangles. Okay, and then we put the triangle back down, and we have this one in our hand, and only 2 seconds have passed. They're munching on the little potato chip. We let them swallow. We don't give them a big potato chip, just a teeny tiny piece of it. We put it in their hand again, and we say put with same. And we hesitate just a second to see, are they going to move towards doing it? And if they don't, we're going to go and help guide them over. Maybe we don't do quite as much prompting, but if we need to, we will, right? But our whole idea is to be fading our prompts from the beginning. Put with same, child puts it down, yay! And we say, they're both triangles, good job, reward, right? This is how we begin to teach this. So we start with, this is called errorless learning. There's no choice here, right? There's only one to put it with. We want them to get it right, because we want to reinforce them, because they're going to come back for more. Great. So over time, we're saying to them, and we're going to do 10 of these probably in a row. It feels ridiculous. As a parent and as a teacher, it feels ridiculous. Really? This is what we're doing? Hey, this is what works. Science has shown this is what works. And we're going to graduate this lesson up. So, and we're going to fade this prompt. So eventually, maybe I take one finger and I say put with same, and I'm just very lightly guiding. And then the next time I say put with same, and the child goes to do it by themselves. And when they do it by themselves, we raise the roof. Then they get the full potato chip, and we go, yay! And maybe if we're at 10 when they do that, we give them a break and we go and play something really wonderful and come back and do it again. Now, eventually, we're going to put some distractors in here. And maybe I put the circle and the square in there, and I say to the child, put with same. And the child puts with same, and they're still, maybe they go to put it with the circle, because they're just thinking, oh, I'm matching up anything with anything. And I, before they can get it on the circle, I guide their hand over and put it and go, yay, that's the same. These are triangles. Do I stop to say this is a circle? I do not. And I don't even have to use, I could put scissors there. I could put, scissors in a phone and say, put was same. Yay, these are both triangles. Yay, fabulous. And I give reinforcement. Okay, so that's matching. Eventually, I am going to work on this with receptive, and I'm only going to have one. And I'm going to say, give me the triangle. I've only got a triangle here. And I say, give me the triangle. I'm starting to teach the child the receptive label of triangle. Give me the triangle. And then I might have to guide their hand over and say, yay, thank you. That was giving me the triangle. This is a triangle. Give me the triangle. And I have to guide their hand again. And we just do this over and over and over again. It feels ridiculous. But over time, the child goes, because they're being reinforced each time, I say, give me the triangle. The child does it completely on their own. Yay! They're learning what a triangle is. And then eventually, again, I'm going to put other distractors there and say, give me the triangle. And they take the triangle, big reinforcement when they're doing this because they're starting to understand that this is the triangle. Now I have on here plan for generalization right from the beginning. Generalization is when the child understands, and right now I'm only teaching a pink triangle, right? I want to make sure that the child understands that this shape is a triangle and that they recognize a triangle absolutely everywhere we go. So am I going to use this pink triangle every time when I'm teaching this lesson? No. Sometimes I'm going to have a blue triangle, and sometimes I'm going to have a two-dimensional triangle, and sometimes I'm going to have a picture of a triangle, and sometimes I'm going to use a block that's a triangle. I'm not going to, because I want the child to be learning that a triangle is not just a pink piece of paper. So we're planning right from the beginning, and we're constantly changing what this is, which is another good reason to not go out and buy a lot of expensive flashcards. You're going to comb garage sales and find stimuli and ask other people, hey, are you done with what you used for these things? It's amazing what you have laying around the house, though. Absolutely amazing. So over time, and I'm going to make sure that the child fully gets what a triangle is, and then I'm going to move on to circle. And I'm going to start back at matching with circle. And I'm going to ask the child to match the circle. And then I'm going to bring in my distractors, and now the triangle's there and they know the triangle, but I'm going to be using the circle. And I'm going to wait until they fully get circle. And that's called mass trialing, when we're just working on one thing at a time. I'm never going to say to them when I'm working on the circle, even though I know they know the triangle, I'm never going to say, give me the circle, and then the next time say, give me the triangle. That's random rotation. And I wait until I fully believe that they know what a circle is. Then I'm going to randomly rotate. Then I'm going to sometimes, and I'm going to move these things around, and I'm going to say, give me the circle, and the child gives me the circle. Yay! Reinforcement. And then I'm going to move them back around, and I'm going to say, give me the triangle. Yay! Right? Until I can see that they're getting it right every time. Then I'm going to start all over with the square. And I go through the errorless learning with the square, and I do the matching with the square, and then I do the expressive, and then I do the receptive, and then I start, after they totally have it, then I'm going to randomly rotate between these three things. And in this way, they are going to learn the circle, the square, and the triangle. Now, where does that's DTT. And I'm going to take data on it to see, are they getting it right on the first trial? Each time I'm going to do something, I'm going to mark down in a set of 10, did they get it right? Did they get it right? Did they have to be prompted? Because I want to keep records on this. It's really going to be so important, and we'll have experts explain to you why, but you're going to see immediately that you learn so much if you actually will take the data. But eventually, at some point, and it may be fairly early on, this might take a week, this might take 2 weeks, this might take a day, depending on how fast the child learns. All children learn at different rates. But it's worth it no matter what, because at some point, then we're going to take this into the natural environment. And you can do all kinds of things with that. There's a whole segment on the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse where they identify shapes within things that are happening in the natural environment. So they'll show a scene in Mickey's house, or, in the orchard behind Mickey's Clubhouse, house and they'll say, can you find the circles? And it's in the tree. There's apples in the tree, and they highlight them and they light up. Well, you can do that kind of thing all day, every day. You can do that in the car as you're driving to OT and say to your child, once they know what a circle is, you can say, on the way to OT, let's see how many circles we can find on the way. So you're driving along and you see something that's a circle, that whether it's a manhole, and you go, oh, I see a circle. Do you see it? It's there, and call attention to it in the natural environment. You can do this in your living room and say to your child, we're going on a treasure hunt and we're going to find all the circles. And you can put the piece of paper in their hand and say, find 3 things that are a circle, and when you do, we're going to go have a picnic lunch. And you can beforehand help them out. If it's a child that's having a hard time engaging in the environment, you can put a bunch of quarters or pennies around laying on tables so that you know for sure that there are circle things, and you can direct them to them and say, I see a circle here. Do you see it too? So lots of different ways in which we can work on these things. And then the next day, maybe, today is triangle day in our house, and we're looking for all the triangles that we can see. Or maybe we're just drawing triangles today. And when you put triangles together, that's a more complex task, but when we put triangles together, what do we get then? But really, you can make it as fun as possible. But if your child isn't learning these things in the typical way, DTT is a great, clear way to introduce it. I know it seems like a foreign thing, but I want to encourage you. And if you want to know more about teaching DTT and understanding mass trialing and random rotation, really want to encourage you to do CARDI learning. It's a fabulous online way for you to learn exactly what all of these things are. We're here to support you with all of those things, but man, it's a great course that you can do on your own time. I've gone on way too long, but teach and enjoy it. Make sure you're reinforcing, and you can teach shapes, you can teach anything, but important to remember to generalize. All right. Stick with us. We're going to be back with an IEP tip after these messages.
Good looking, buddy. I brought some toys to play with today. Is that cool? Okay, you want to play? Say,
Therapy, that one-on-one, when kids have been in an environment where no one understands them, and then you finally put them in an environment where they understand all the consequences of where they see, if they did something that was supposed to be done, they get reinforced for it.
Say, yeah, there we go. Good job.
For the first time, kids like him start to understand kind of interaction, because it's made very clear in therapy. We'll start just like all therapy, which is we start with compliance.
Do this. Good job. It's your turn.
Really working on getting him to listen to us, listen to a few directions like stand up or come here.
This is come here. All right, bud? Okay, try by yourself, okay? Come here. All right, you did it. Good job. See, that was so easy.
The idea is that we had to get his attention first. And once you get a good foundation of compliance, then his therapy would be a combination of at the table, where it's very clear and succinct language, combined with just more play.
You say, what is that? Banana, that's right. Banana. What else do you see? Carrots. Good talking.
Then we look at language, making sure that he can make his desired requests and needs met. Getting him to figure out that, hey, I'm learning these words, and these words are actually useful. It teaches them the idea of communication and not using another person as a tool.
Okay, sure. Here you go.
And then also what's important to the family. What behaviors or what areas of focus do they need help with?
One goal, I don't know how we're going to get there, but one of the things I've noticed that's different about him is I'll see a 2-year-old in one of our little restaurants that we can take him, and the kid just feeds himself lunch. Now Jack feeds himself pancakes, he feeds himself applesauce.
but most everything else we have to feed him. And I'm really looking forward to the day where he just eats.
Okay, so that's banana by a spoon. He likes the taste of banana, he doesn't mind the texture in his mouth, but when you get the visual into it, he gets very upset. So it just strikes me that it's all behavioral.
He's playing defensive ball right now.
And there was banana in that yogurt too, so he eats it every day. And he gets so upset, so offended.
I think a lot of his issues with eating have developed into behavioral issues. I think he may have had texture issues, and I think he probably still has a lot of sensory issues, but I think a lot of it now is habit.
I think for Jack Riley, he was very tactile defensive in his mouth. He just doesn't like the feeling of it, and then it moves into a routine. It moves into the rigidity of autism, where they only want to eat certain things. They like what is familiar, and they like to do the same things over and over. And I think the fact that he's not eating food where he really has to chew, that's going to affect his oral motor development, which will affect his language and how clear he is. Getting some of that muscle development going in his face and his mouth, because you're going to have to use a lot of those muscles to be able to make sounds and make words.
What are you doing, kiddo? So silly.
It is Thursday night, day 2 of our official ABA services have kicked in, and we are getting ready for bed. We run our energies off at night before bedtime. After the intensity of ABA, it's shocking that he has any energy. We think he'll sleep very well tonight. They're definitely pushing him to say sounds and do things he's not used to doing. He had a few meltdowns, and he did okay. He's gonna be so smart.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
My name is Vince Redman, and I'm one of the regional directors for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. There's lots of things that are different working with teenagers than working with the elementary or early intervention kids. Puberty. I mean, the number one thing you have teenagers where their bodies are changing and their expectations are changing, their interests are changing. They start getting interested in boys and girls. They start getting interested in what their other peers are doing. They start getting interested in, different fads that are going on. And plus, it depends on the level of severity within the disorder. You also have to be very careful that if you are a teenager, that they're not interested in certain things, meaning that they're still not interested in early intervention. They're not interested in like Barney or cartoons and Thomas the Train and those types of things, because they're not age appropriate anymore. Yet they still have that internal desire to be attracted to or to really like it. And I think that is just as important. But again, when we're looking at teenagers, there's a whole array based on the spectrum. But we're also looking at transitional living. They have to start learning more self-independent skills. They're learning skills that are going to make them successful in school, at home, and at times when they're by themselves, to self-supervise. Can they make snacks? Can they make meals? Can they know how to turn on and off the TVs? Do they know how to use the telephone? Just on the top of my head, some basic skills that they need to know so that they can be able to be self-sufficient for certain periods of time. So, you have everything as sophisticated as social, boy-girl relationships and what's a fad, what's not a fad, what my friends think versus what my friends don't think, to very easy things to just, can they get to and from school? Can they, microwave some popcorn? And can they use a telephone in a case of an emergency? So there's a wider range that when you're looking at teenagers. But to some extent, there's similarities to early intervention, but it's a whole new world when we get into transitional skills and independent learning skills that are much different than when they were, 5, 6, 7 years old. Now we're looking at 15, 16, 17, and the expectations on them are much different than they were when they were younger. So I think the programming changes. The expectations change, that their cognitive ability changes. They should be also learning more advanced abstract learning inferences, deception, sarcasm, belief systems, being able to plan, strategize, problem solve, much more abstract situations than concrete situations that they learned at a very early age. So there's lots that go into when you're working with teenagers. It's a whole new ball game. It's like, to some extent starting over, because there's a new list of expectations, there's a new list of needs, and there's a new list of concerns and deficits that come forth. And we strategize for those differently, we look at those differently and individually, and we set a new plan for there. Motivating teenagers is always a challenge, because for what every one kid likes, another kid likes something else. But we try to motivate them with things that are age appropriate as well. We want to stay away from some of their early motivations, which might have changed. Again, primary, such as food, we want to, we necessarily don't want to do that. Again, early childhood preferences, like certain videos or certain cartoons or certain toys, oftentimes aren't mature enough, or they're not age appropriate anymore. So we have to look at all new things. Many social things that are socially acceptable now are very appealing to our teenagers. iPods, iPhones, video games, computer games, even computer websites such as YouTube and things of that nature are very reinforcing to our kids. Also, privileges. One of the things I think we always have to remember is giving our kids privileges is very reinforcing. Being able to choose what movie they have for movie night, what dinner is going to be made that night, 10 extra minutes on the computer, things of that nature, which we're really reinforcing, because it reinforces them to be independent. It reinforces them to want to do that again. And it's done in a way that we would do with any of our teenagers.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and you had an opportunity to see the A word in that package, and I hope that you guys are watching the A word. And you can watch the entire series on YouTube, on their very own YouTube channel, to catch up with Jack Riley and what he's doing. And of course, next week we'll show you the next episode. It's really kind of amazing what has been happening with this little boy that they're following. And there are more than a year of archived episodes now, so that you really can see the progress and see how introducing things in the way that we were just talking about, and mass trialing them and then randomly rotating, progress is made, and it's quite substantial. But I wanted to take a second and talk with you about IEPs and some things that we can do. And one of the most important things, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, and honestly, in the world of what I thought I was going to be doing when I was a teenage girl, and what I thought parenting was going to mean, I did not have any idea how much paperwork and how much filing there was going to be. Had I known, I don't know what I would have thought. I think I would have been mystified. But it is so important that we keep the paperwork together and safe and in one place, and where we can get at it. So we have a couple of things, and that's for everything. When you go to the doctor, when when you're talking with your ABA providers, when you're talking with the people who are doing your funding, the paperwork, right? But there is a whole set of protocol that's just for IEPs. And of course, if you're new to the world of autism, or you have children that are very, very young, let me help you by telling you that IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan or Program. And it is what happens for your child You'll get together in a meeting with a group of people and they come up with a plan and make an offer of what is FAPE. Oh, it's just jargon land today. Free, appropriate public education. Your child, despite the fact that they have different and varied skills, is entitled to, and every child in the United States is entitled to, a free, appropriate public education. And that, they shorten that with FAPE. Free, appropriate public education. You will go to the IEP meeting and they will make an offer of what they consider free, appropriate public education. They may say, hey, your child, we want to give your child a half an hour of speech a week, and we want to give your child an hour of OT, and here are the things, the goals that we think are reasonable, and here are the supports that we're going to put in place for your child to reach those goals. If you agree with their offer of FAPE, you sign the document. You never sign it that day. You always take it home and at least read through it to make sure that it says what they said, right? And bring it back the next day or whatever day, if you have to consult a lawyer, whatever. But that document is a legal document. It is enforceable. If the school is not in compliance with what they said on the document, they're in some deep doo-doo, which is, you know, that technical legal term. Not a lawyer, deep doo-doo. Deep kimchi, as a friend of mine likes to say. So in any case, that document is important. It's one of the most important documents that you're going to have in your household. And one of the things that, as we said, you have to have a way of being able to access these documents on a regular basis. One of the things that Autism Speaks recommends that you do in their 100-day packages that you can get if you're in the first 100 days of autism, one of the things that they recommend is that you get a scanner that can scan a group of papers at a time and go into your computer so that you're not inundated with the paperwork. I don't think that's a bad idea, but I think it is a little extra work that you have to put them into folders that you know where to find them, because otherwise you have thousands of pieces of paper that are not classified. So make sure that you're naming the documents and putting them in places and backing them up on your computer before you get rid of originals. I'm a gal who likes originals but doesn't like the paper of the originals. So in any case, scan or file all of the documents. It's so important that you have them. It's going to make a difference in the long run. And you might think, oh, well, I don't need to save last year's IEP. Yes, you really do. You never know when it's going to come in handy. So always have those papers. I have a friend who literally has a hook in her one room and there's a sheet protector and there's a little hole in the sheet protector and the IEP goes in there and it goes on the hook and it lives there. There's no other paperwork there, so that if she needs to access that IEP, she knows right where it is. Okay, my office is a mess, but you know, I can find it if I have to, and I do have to on a regular basis. But really important that you know where it is. Make sure that you put all requests in writing and include dates on it. So, we're told by our legal friends who drop by the show from time to time that email is an acceptable form of in writing, and usually within email it has a date on it. But always dates, reference dates whenever you can. So if you're sending an email to someone and you say, as per our conversation today on Monday, September 24th, 2013, whatever day it is, I want to go over a couple of the points that we did. You know, on August 14th, we had requested an IEP meeting, and on September 2nd, you said we could just inundate them with dates. It's important that you keep the timeline really importantly. If you really clearly, if you're going to end up look, I know none of us wants to end up in due process or in mediation, but sometimes you have to. And if you end up having to be there, you're going to want to have the dates, because the judge or the person who is doing the mediation is going to say, when did that happen? And when you have the dates, you look like you know what you're doing. Just keep a diary, whatever, and put those dates in every communication that you have. Just do it. And I will tell you that I've heard from a lot of people that they feel like by putting the dates in there, it prevents you. It's like a preventative measure from having to go to mediation and having to go to due process, because the schools see that you're somebody who has it together and who's staying on it. And, you know, quite honestly, they don't want to mess with that. It's easier for them to get, if you're asking for reasonable things, to give you what you want than have to mess with a parent who is keeping everything in a ledger and saying, you know, it took you this long to respond. Yeah, they don't want to deal with that. In most cases, not in all, but it won't harm you if you keep the dates. And later when you write your book about what you did, the dates will be there. It'll all work out. It's a brilliant thing. Okay, and then always, always, always we talk about tape recording all IEP meetings, and you can't see it on my screen because it's cut off here, but you want to notify the school in writing. I would suggest you do it a minimum of 48 hours in advance. I know some states you have 24 hours, but some states it's 48, and so why guess? Do as soon as you get the IEP invitation, send back a thing and say, and by the way, we will be tape recording. You can bring in one of those digital tape recorders, or you can bring in one of the old-fashioned tape recorders if you have one of those. Make sure that you have sufficient batteries to get through however long the meeting is going to be, and the first time they're going to tell you it's going to be an hour-long meeting. It's not going to be an hour-long meeting. I've never been in an IEP meeting that ever lasted less than 2 hours, so plan accordingly battery-wise, or ask if there is going to be a plug, because sometimes you will be in a situation in one of their rooms where they do not have electricity. So as hard as that may be, to be prepared battery-wise, and have a way to record on that tape to, if it's a thing that you're going to digitally do it, transfer it to your computer, date it, so that it's there. It makes a difference, but you must request in writing to be able to tape record. When you tape record, they will also tape record. So there will be 2 tapes so that no one can say you edited this out. Chances are you're never, ever going to need that tape to be played in court, but the fact that you tape record it changes the tenor of the meeting. I've heard this from so many parents, Whenever a parent writes to me and says, well, I was at the IEP meeting and they said this, and it's something that I'm appalled, and I go, really? And they said that, and you had a tape recorder? And in all instances, the parent will say, no, we couldn't tape record because our tape recorder was broken, or we didn't have the, and it happens. This happens. I myself have been to little IEP meetings where it didn't work out that I had a tape recorder for whatever reason. It's different. It's different when you have the IEP with a tape recorder. Everybody knows it, everybody gets it, and it goes according to business lines. That's what you want. You want an IEP. Now, I will say this, that it means that you have to be behaving too. I know I have been in IEP meetings before where I felt like yelling. There is no yelling in an IEP meeting, at least not from the parent side. We just don't do that. If you have to get up and say, excuse me, I have to go to the restroom for a second, I need to get a drink of water, I need to go consult a psychologist, whatever it is, but get up and leave. Do not put yourself and your child in a position where you're at the IEP meeting and you're the person yelling, no matter how unreasonable they're being. That's like the line in the sand, that if we keep ourselves together, and if they lose it, that's fine. You got the tape recorder running, and you're going to end up getting what is appropriate for your child without a big fight if they're losing at an IEP meeting and you got a tape recorder going. But the flip is true too. If you're at the IEP meeting and the tape recorders are going and you're yelling, your chances of getting what you had hoped for diminish greatly. So we do not do that. If you have to go outside and get in your car and scream at the top of your lungs and cry and come back in, do it. Do it. But don't do it in the meeting. Don't do it while the tape recorders are running. But keep a record of everything. Keep it. Be a pack rat in terms of these kinds of paper. You never know when it's going to come in handy. I've seen that, and I know many other parents have seen that it makes the difference. If you have the piece of paper and you can say, here's what it said, that sometimes makes the difference of what your child gets and the amount of progress that they get to make in a school situation. IEPs can be stressful, but if we keep the paperwork, they don't have to be. Keep a good record system. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we may or may not be joined by a guest. We're working out the technical issues, so stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're still trying to work things out. We have a guest that we had planned on having on about this time, and we're working things out and having some technical difficulties. So we may be postponing that. I don't know, and I'm going to get back to you on that. But as luck would have it, it gives us opportunity to talk about a pretty interesting post that is on circleofmoms.com right now. This is an open letter that was posted last week by a Vermont mom named Sarah Biggs Cheney. You can find it on www.circleofmoms.com, and we will also share it on our Facebook Autism Live once I'm done talking about it. I'm not going to read the whole letter to you, but to give you the gist of it. Dear moms and dads, it's been a difficult day. I know, right there you want to take the breath, right? When I picked up my daughter from camp this afternoon, she was pretty upset. Some bully in her camp group had pulled her aside on the hiking trail to whisper, "Hey, no one likes you here." My daughter said she ran away and had a good cry. She doesn't want to go back to camp tomorrow. She wonders if people don't like her because her tummy is too big or because her hair is too red. She wonders if it is because she forgot to smile that one time in the lunchroom. Now, I hate it like crazy that my daughter is being bullied and teased, but I can't say that I'm surprised. She's 9 years old, and she likes to go her own way. She's really creative. She sings, dances, teaches herself to play piano. She's an amazing artist. She has her own sense of style, like her mom, who liked to wear a necktie skirt to school in the 7th grade. She's not afraid to tell a joke she just made up or sing a passionate rendition of Gaga's Born This Way in a room full of strangers. She thinks and talks along her own pathways. She likes to share the things she loves: fashion tips, yo mama jokes, Barbie info, Las Vegas postcards. She loves and appreciates and creates with all kinds of things. She's awesome. One of a kind. And so I say I'm not surprised, because I remember my own years in middle school, and I know that kids get teased for standing out, and girls get it extra bad, especially when they're irrepressible. And I know that some of you may think that it's natural and it'll pass, or even that it's okay. And I know that you may feel that all children are capable of teasing, and that you love your own children, and that you have your own problems. I know it may not come as an instinct to stop your child when he or she walks in the door from school and asks, "So, stomp on anybody's heart today? I sure hope not." And I know, on the other hand, how many of you do try to teach your children to show compassion and empathy. You are out there doing your best to send kind-hearted little human beings out into the world. I know all that, but still I want to say that too many of our children are stomping on each other's hearts, and that maybe you could help to make it better. And I want to ask you to make it a priority, not just to teach your kids tolerance or pity, but to teach them real appreciation for other people and personalities and ways of being in the world. I want you to show them that you think it's more than just okay, but awesome that people come along who teach us to think differently about what's normal or what's reasonable or what's cool. I want you to make it a value in their minds, not a concession or a sad reality. And I want you to think that this is your job to do this, as much as it is my job to make my daughter laugh when she comes home crying, to make extra stuffing her favorite for dinner, and to stand furious and eloquent at the camp counselor's door. Okay, here we go. And I, in first reading this, I was like, wow, this is a really awesome letter, and I appreciate this because I felt that it was coming from somebody who has a neurotypical child. But here we go. My daughter, the singer and comedian and artist, has autism. Okay. To be clear, her life isn't a tragedy. And she doesn't, see, I'm crying too much, I can't even see it anymore. And she doesn't need your pity or your bumper sticker. She is a joyous, brilliant girl who wants to be, as she tells me, either a computer engineer or a rock star. She loves science and drama, math not so much, but beyond our family, she has no close friends. She's not invited on play dates, though she'd love to be. Even more, she would love to be invited to other kids' birthday parties. Like many of your kids, she just wants to be herself and have a place to belong. She needs you to see better and more informed attitudes in your children, to seed better and more informed attitudes in your children. She needs you to encourage your children to give her a chance to be a part of their communities, and she signs it. And there is a postscript, too, which I think is equally important if I can get through it without getting really, really messy. Because obviously, I think we all relate to this, right? It's that thing about see our kids, see them as individuals. So here's her postscript here. When I tell you my daughter has autism, maybe you'll think, that explains it. But I want to advise you to be very careful in making that assumption. Many people think autism equals extreme social deficiency. But in fact, the story is far more complicated and varied than that stereotype. In this case, my daughter has been subject to explicit friendship instruction for years, the kind of instruction we all could benefit from, I think. I think she's talking about ABA. There is no doubt that she knows something about how to make friends, but teachers and speech therapists, for the most part, inadvertently teach her that it is her job entirely to make the social connection. And she goes on to say that perhaps, the rest of us and all of our friends who have neurotypical children need to take that on. And she says, where is the intensive, relentless friendship instruction for the vicious little bullies and tiny conformists? Indeed. Okay, so we should say that Sarah Biggs-Cheney is the Assistant Director for Program Development in Dartmouth College's Institute for Writing and Rhetoric. She also teaches first-year writing classes at Dartmouth, and obviously a beautiful writer. Again, this is on circleofmoms.com. I want to encourage all of you to go there, to take this, and we'll put it on our Facebook as well. Share it on your Facebook. Maybe somebody will read this and make a change in how they're doing things with their neurotypical children, because it isn't just our kids. It isn't just our kids. They need to get something back. We've all had this happen, right? We're training our children and teaching our children how to reach out to friends. And I've certainly seen this with my son, where he'll say hi to somebody and they walk on by and don't say anything, and the parent sits there and lets them. It's frustrating, very frustrating, but we want to say thank you to Sarah Biggs-Cheney for this amazing letter. And again, I'm going to post this right now during the break on our Facebook, and I hope that you guys will share it around. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son, Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I want to let you know that we did just post, it's brand new, fresh, on our Autism Live Facebook page, the link to go to that blog that we just, the open letter that we were talking about. Dear moms and dads, it's been a difficult day. So that is there. While you're there, you can answer the question of the day. We do have some responses to the question of the day. And the question was, how do you find time to spend with your significant other or friends? And I'm laughing because I said to you guys earlier, maybe there are one or two of you who have figured this out, and it is a positive assumptive question, assuming that you have figured it out. I have not figured it out. Don't tell anybody. It's just our little secret. And maybe you figured it out, maybe you haven't figured it out, but somebody has figured it out. So one person wrote in and said, I'm totally blessed that my folks and my brother lives close by and loves spending time with my 10-year-old son, so that my husband and I get to have an occasional mini date. Oh my gosh, how lucky are you? That's absolutely wonderful. And that you have family that lives close by and is supportive and understanding, and that you feel like you can have them spend time with your child. That's a wonderful wonder. I'm chartreuse with envy. How fabulous is that? And then I love the response from somebody else who says, my who, what now? With 3 question marks. Do I have those? Maybe they're under the huge pile of laundry I'm going to fold later. Tee-hee. Kidding. I rarely want the time with friends and significant others instead of my kids. Usually it's all of us together. And I, I'm the same way. When we get together, usually I'm always wanting it to be with the kids. And I like it that way, the person says. For the alone time with hubby, we are lucky that his schedule often allows him to be home when the kids are at school. Because I promise you, when the kids are home, it just isn't going to happen. We live in a home with only one room, and sneaking out to the car, and it isn't as fun as it was when we were teenagers. Oh, I want to be friends with you, because you have the sense of humor that I so enjoy. It is tough. It is. I love this. My what, my who, my where. Yeah. But I, too, tend to go towards the get-togethers where it can be the kids included. And I think that that's pretty typical of everyone once they get into the mode of having kids. And what's lovely is that my friends who have completely neurotypical children, that tends to be their preference too. It means you don't have to get babysitters. They get to have a play date. You get to have a little bit of time with the adults. It's a little harder, I'm going to say, for me when we get together and do those things than for my other friends. I still have a hard time totally letting go and allowing my son to completely interact with his friends. And I see that the other kids, as much as they've been around my son throughout the years, there is an expectation because he talks now. When he was little, I can remember one of the kids saying, why doesn't he talk? He's the same size as me. I don't understand why he doesn't talk. And we had conversations about that, but my son has improved so much that, he talks now. And, it doesn't mean that everything he says is understood, because sometimes his way of wording something, you have to kind of, figure out. And sometimes he doesn't put things in the context for somebody to be able to understand. He's still struggling with those kinds of things. But it's more social things now. It's more social things and cues that he might miss, or especially it seems like all of the friends that we have multiple children. There is no only child. So when we go to get together and it's a group of families, everybody's interacting and everybody gravitates towards the kids that are the same age as them. But one of the things I've noticed in the last couple of times that we've done these kind of interactions is that the other kids run to their brothers and sisters, and they'll go and play with the other kids for a little while, but then the brothers and the sisters kind of group together, and they have a way of talking to each other and being with each other that is completely foreign to my child. Sometimes they're mean to each other, and he does not know how to react to that. And because, we have taught him over the years, learn through observation, and if rules are, changing in a different place, but he's supposed to put it through the filter of whether it's appropriate. It's a really hard thing for him because he sees them talking to each other in a way that is not nice, right? And then what will happen is that before the evening is over or the afternoon is over, at some point he'll say something that's not nice, and then they all turn and go, that's not allowed, because that's how it is with groups of siblings. And I know I'm one of 3 children, and I can say whatever I want about my brother or my sister, and it's okay for me because I'm the sibling, but it's not okay for you to say it to me, right? Right? And to explain that to a 9-year-old, with social issues, right? It makes it hard. It makes it really, really hard for him. So I have a hard time completely relaxing and maybe appreciating the event as much as I would like to. But it's better than not getting together at all. And it does give him another opportunity. And this is the thing that I constantly have to remind myself, is that it's okay to give him opportunities, even if they don't end with the great expectation. By the 300th time he goes and gets together with friends that have siblings, he'll have gotten it. But, I can't expect him to get it after 4 trials, right? So I need to leave myself open to more of those things. Okay, we have questions. I'm not paying attention to the question box. Here we go. Okay. Is it okay to ask your ABA or other therapist to babysit your child, presuming, of course, that you trust them and we will pay them directly? That's a great question. I'm going to put it up on the screen so that everybody can see it. It depends on the ABA provider. And it depends on how you feel and how the therapist feels. Now, for the longest time when we were here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, that was not something that was permissible. And there are reasons why there are some providers who, and I don't know that that's a policy anymore. In fact, I think that policy has changed here since we have stopped having therapy, because they became aware of how difficult it is to get quality trained babysitters. But there is a concern that you want to make sure, it's next to impossible. There are going to be ABA providers who are going to come in your home and you are going to become friends with them. And it's really hard for them not to become a member of your family. My goodness, they see your dirty laundry on the floor. They see the argument that you have with your husband. They see the bills that come in. They see when you're crying because something else has happened. I mean, they're there. It's hard to stay emotionally removed. And I don't even know that I would say to you, be mindful of it. Be very, very mindful of it. And there's very good reasons why you should be mindful of it. You don't want to have the day-to-day crud that can happen in any relation gum up the relationship that your child has with your therapist. Now, I know some of you watch Parenthood. I love Parenthood. And they were showing a situation in which a therapist, I love how they show little snippets because there's an element of truth in everything that they do, and they don't show the full-blown, but they can't. It's an hour-long show, right? We have more time than they have. And we don't have enough time to talk about everything. But within the storyline, and of course we know that Jason Katims, who is one of the lead producers on that show, is an autism parent. And so there is some firsthand experience and some knowledge of things that only an autism parent would know. But there is a cautionary tale, and of course it's just a TV show, but I think we've all heard of different circumstances where something happened that didn't have to do with therapy that prevented the therapist from coming and being able to be productive with your child. And they take an extreme example on Parenthood where the therapist ends up having an affair with the uncle that doesn't go well, and so she can't come and do therapy anymore, and the child loses a therapist that's been able to really help them. So that's an extreme example, and I don't think that's going to happen in your home, right? That's Hollywood and entertainment. But it does remind all of us that we have to be mindful of you can be friends, I think. I've been successfully friends. Peter Farrig is a member of my family, and there's nothing you can convince me. He was the first therapist that ever came to our door. I can't wait to babysit his children. Do you know what I'm saying? And you could never convince me otherwise. But we tried to be mindful while we were friends with Peter that we didn't put extra strains on that relationship, because the most important part of the relationship was the relationship that he had with our son. So if you can be mindful of that, and if you can have somebody babysit, and if the ABA provider is okay with it, and you've agreed on be very clear about what the expectations are, that they're not doing ABA therapy while they're there, because you don't want to pay for that, I don't think, maybe, and you need to go through your agency if it's going to be ABA. That you don't want to be doing that. That would be a bad thing ethically. But what the expectations are and what you're going to pay them, and be 100% clear and mindful. Then there are some agencies that allow for that. But I would start by asking with the agency, if you're with an agency and you've got a therapist who's so good that you would leave them with your child because you trust them that much, don't jeopardize that by going behind the agency's back. Ask them, do you allow for this? And I think that most agencies, when they realize how badly people need babysitters, they'll consider that. Okay, I'm not sure that I'm understanding what this question is, but we're going to put it up there. The question is, where do you live? I want to mail you my children's book. The letter is awesome. Okay, so the open letter, I think, is what you were talking about. I don't know if you want to know where I live or where the author of that letter lived. If you go onto Facebook and go onto our page and click on the link that's there, you can see where she lives in Vermont. I live in Southern California. We're here in the Los Angeles area, and anytime you want to mail anything to us, if it's us that you want to mail things to, or if you want to mail something to the woman who wrote the letter, I'm not sure which one, but if you want to mail something to us, we have a snail mail address here. Emily, do we still have the slide that has that? Okay, email us and we'll get that for you, because I can't remember it off the top of my head. I'm not good with, so there's our email. Email us, then we'll email you back the snail mail address that you can send to us. Okay, here we go. And so I'm going to mark that. There, we showed that. I'm going to mark that complete. This is a great question, and I don't know that I know the answer to it, because I am figuring this out myself as I go. It's one of those things. Okay, so the question is, what do you say to your child's friends when they so blatantly ignore your child right in front of you? My child likes to say long goodbyes to each of his little friends, and they look away. If only they could just respond to his farewells. My heart... if only they would just respond to his farewells, my heart would hurt. He is oblivious to their rudeness, I think. The teacher never corrects these children, which could be such a teachable lesson. What would you do? This is dicey, slippery slope, right? I'm showing this to you guys. Because two things we got to keep in mind here. That we want to stay friends with the parents, because while the child we think is oblivious, one of the things that Evelyn Gould, BCBA, always reminds me is that sometimes they appear to be oblivious and they're not really. And sometimes the child can be oblivious to bullying in terms of they don't understand language-wise what's happening, but later on when they get a sense of it, that they can have a past memory of it that can really be cumulative. It's like catching up on all the bullying all at once. And we see children have anxiety sometimes when it all comes together for them and they understand. So we want to be really mindful of that. And we never want to be in a position where, and this is a hard one, because sometimes you think, oh, thank goodness they're oblivious to it. And we say, I'm going to let that go this time. And I certainly have done that, and now I'm thinking, oh no, I gotta stand up for my child in the way that I can. But you never want to tick off the teacher or the parent, right? Because that cuts off the supply to the child. So how do we go about this creatively and find a way in which we can make it reinforcing for the other child to do something that helps your child. Yeah. And I think it's best to ask the teacher or ask the parent and enlist their help first, so that it doesn't appear that you're going behind their back to the child or to the students. But to say to the parent, for instance, hey, could you help me? I am trying to work on something with my child. You know how Billy, when he's saying farewells, he just takes the really longest time to do it, and we're trying to work on that. But I need for it to be reinforcing for him to do it shorter. And I really need to work on it with a child who's willing to accept the fact that it's going to take him a while to do that. Could I do something for your child and enlist your child's help to get him to the point, and start by paying attention to him when he's doing the long farewells, and maybe we can work out some sort of thing where your child can do or say something and help to teach my child that he needs to be shorter in how he says his farewells, so that it forces the other child to pay attention and he becomes part of the teaching moment with your child, and that you offer some sort of reinforcement, that you say, and you build that other child up and say, hey, or let the other parent do it and say, hey, I really need your help here. This is something where you could be an awesome friend. And what happens sometimes is that the other child will say, oh yeah, I really want to help to do that, and they feel like I'm special. Sometimes they take it a little too far, and you kind of have to monitor it. But also going to the teacher and saying, hey, I have a problem. My child needs to, and I need a group of children to work on this. Is there a way? Can I, institute some sort of policy? And I'm willing to, if we can, do a point system and say, I need all of the friends in the classroom to help for this many days. And if we do this many days, then I'll pay for a pizza party for all the kids. And we'll celebrate that they're all such good helpers for my son. Or I just need these 3 kids over here to help and support, and here's how we're going to measure it, and when they do it, here's the reward that we're going to give, and decide based on age and ability, what you can do. But just like we do with our kids, if we want to teach them a new skill, we have to make it reinforcing for them. We have to find a way to make it reinforcing for the other little snots who are ignoring our children. I know, it's maddening. But you know what happens when you come at it with that kind of thing and you say to the other parent, can you help me? Instead of saying, why isn't your child doing this? Could you just ask your child who has it so nice to suck it up and pay attention to my child? That doesn't get received in the right way, does it? But if we say, oh, I need some help, and I don't want your child just to do it, I'm willing to do this, a lot of times a parent will go, oh my gosh, of course, no, my child would be delighted. You don't have to give them anything, right? But make sure you do. Make sure you praise or have something wonderful or have a special snack, right? But it gives the other parent, it makes them feel like they're helping you out. And as defensive as people are, I think that most good people, if they knew what to do, would want to help you. So that's my advice, but man, it's dicey, and it's like bobbing and weaving and finding the right words to say, but figure it out. Figure out the way to reinforce the parent, figure out how to reinforce the child, figure out how to reinforce the teacher, and figure out how to reinforce the class. There are lots of ways. Be creative. And when you figure out what works for write in and tell us, because we're all looking for that thing, right? And there are so many different circumstances. But I love you wrote, I'm going to mark this complete. I showed it, right? I'm going to mark that complete. And you said, thanks so much. That's a wonderful way to approach his peers about helping him learn appropriate farewell skills. Yeah, but be 100% clear, and thank you for, I'm glad that that's helpful or useful. Figure out exactly what it is that you want the child to do. Don't expect the child to know a bunch of things, and work on it in small little increments. Like, what is happening in the farewell that takes so long? Is it that he doesn't know what he wants to say? and I'm the wrong person to be talking about this. Didn't I just say yesterday when we had Angela Persicki in here, I don't know how to end a conversation. Even in this moment, I don't know how to end. So I could probably use the same lessons, but find a way, my alarm's going off, find a way that you can work on one aspect of it. That maybe you have a criteria that, you know, once you say goodbye, you've got 30 seconds to wrap it up. Or once you say this, that's the cue for this to happen. And know from both sides what you want your child to do, what you want the other child to do, and when they do that, make sure you reinforce them, both of them, on both sides. Okay. Okay, another question that we have here. Oh, this is another good one. You guys have good questions today. I have a 10-year-old son and don't know how to teach him about appropriate touches. He's so immature, sometimes he makes me feel uncomfortable. When I see him with male teachers at church or school, he's too affectionate. Have you taught your child this difficult lesson? You know, I will tell you that we continue to work on this on a regular basis. I've shared before that when my son started preschool, and we would, you know, all these parents would come in and volunteer, and they had this carpet that you would come in and sit on, and they would have story hour. And anytime any parent, any adult would sit on that carpet, my son went, oh, my chair. And he would come over and plop down and snuggle himself in and wrap their arms around him. And it didn't matter if he'd never met the person before. It didn't matter whether it was male or female, you know, and literally my skin would crawl up the front and down the back, because I would think, oh my gosh, you know, how are we ever going to get to stranger danger? How are we going to get to appropriate touches? How are we ever going to do this? And it's such a fine line, right? But we did a bunch of lessons from the skills curriculum about safety, and we did talk about appropriate touches. I know I recently attended a webinar where they were talking about how to prevent children on the autism spectrum from being victims of sexual abuse. And the disheartening thing for me, even though that was the title of the webinar, when we all got there, the expert said, I want to share with you that we're going to institute a bunch of different things to try to prevent this, but the truth of the matter is, and I need to take a breath because this just, you know, that we can't always prevent it. And that we also need to teach our children skills for being able to deal with should something happen and how to report it so that people can be stopped. And that, you know, can I tell you, I hate hearing that reality, because as a parent, I don't want to hear that. But I also know I can't stick my head in the sand. So teaching my child about appropriate touches and what he can do and what he can't do, we talk about it on a daily basis. And I tell you that I think sometimes you know, it's that teeter-totter, that very thin line, and, you know, you go back and forth where sometimes I feel like I'm talking about it too much because I don't want to make him too paranoid, but can you talk about it too much? We talk in our house about the bathing suit area, and that he is not allowed to have anyone touch him in his bathing suit area, and he is not allowed to touch anyone else in their bathing suit area. And that was how we started it. But then, because I went to this webinar, one of the things that I brought up as a result of that, because they were saying, you know, that is all well and good, but the truth of the matter is that sometimes people touch our children in ways that they shouldn't be touching them that doesn't have to do with the bathing suit, right? And it can be a precursor to things. So we also talked to our son about the fact that no one is allowed to touch him without his permission, and that he's not allowed to touch anyone else without their permission. And that is a daily thing. I'll go to school and I'll pick him up. The other day, I picked him up and he was giving his teacher a big old hug, and I had to say to him, I love that you're giving your teacher a hug, but did you ask her permission? And in the past, you know, people will say, oh, no, it's okay. And I say, oh, no, it's not. It is not okay. He does not get to hug you without your permission, because nobody's allowed to hug him without his permission. And making that really super duper well defined, more than you want to. And I always tell him, you get to say no. If somebody is touching you anywhere, you get to say no, whether it's your toe or your hair, right? You get to say no. And I frequently will tell him, you know, if he is touching me, and there are days when I've had enough. Last night, you know, I just had enough. There was an hour where the dog had been jumping up on me because she's very needy, and my son was crawling all over me, and I said, hey guys, this is the no touch zone. For the next hour, nobody gets to touch me. I need my personal space. And we will play personal space where he'll, you know, and I'll play it with him where I say, where's your personal space? Here's mine. It's different. And it's different for mommy at different times of the month. I'm going to be honest with you, right? My personal space, don't come into this. And he also shares that sometimes his personal space is bigger and smaller. So we talk about that. And with our son too, we also realize that he has a great sensory need for hugs. And so we've taught him how to hug himself, how to reach over and give himself a massage, and that he'll sit there in the classroom and he'll hug himself. And that he can even, you know, do this to himself, and it looks like you're fluffing your hair, but you're massaging your head. And you can massage your hand. And that we, you know, some of our kids need that constant sort of pressure, but they can do it to themselves. And 10 is a really good time to start teaching them those skills about how do you take care of that need. It's a real need, but how can you take care of it yourself? Keep after it and have it be a daily thing. Don't have it be entirely miserable. Make sure that it's really fun. We play games about, where's your space? Where's my space? Anyway, in any case, I hope that's helpful to you. And it's a subject that it brings to mind that we have to have somebody come in and talk about this specifically. So we'll get working on that as well. Okay. I'm going to mark that complete. We are going to go to a quick break. I don't know what's happening with our guest. I'm just going to say that. I'm thinking we are having Dr. Jonathan Tarbox at the top of the hour, but I don't know what's happening with the other guests, whether we're postponing. I'm going to find that out during this break. Stick with us.
I am the parent of a 22-year-old young man with autism. We were very lucky. He had behavior analytics services from the get-go, and he's done very well. He's in college now, so we're grateful for that. And many years ago, there weren't a lot of services, so I kind of came into the field myself. Originally to help my own son, and then later it became a new career for me. We offer networking opportunities, information for parents. Most of our parents have children with autism. We have a website that we share with the Autism SIG, and that address is www.autismpppsig.org. A lot of resources. Lots of research articles, conference information, information available for both professionals and for parents about autism treatments and many other behavior analytic topics.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our first guest this morning was set to be Mike Hipple, and we are going to postpone that interview for a date in the future because we're having some technical difficulties. And especially for Mike's interview, we can't afford to have technical difficulties, and I'll tell you why. But Mike has asked if I would read a statement that he had sent to me yesterday, and that will help us to better understand why the technical difficulty is so important, and look forward to some of the different things that we'll talk about with him when we do have him on the show. So this is Mike's writing here, and he wrote, "Good morning or good afternoon. First off, I have this in a notebook on my Eco 2. So please wait to ask any questions till I'm done." And he says, "An Eco 2 is my communication device to talk made by PRC. I want to tell you now quickly about myself. My name is Mike Hipple. I don't have autism myself, but I have CP. So I can understand how hard it is working with the IEP team. My team is awesome. They will do anything to help me. I want quickly to talk about 2 things that happened this week in the news. Then I want to get to talking about my book and communication devices. In Texas, I can't remember the city, a girl with a disability came home who got in a fight with her teacher. Now, this happened before in this city with different students, but the girl can't talk and she didn't have a way to tell her parents how she got in the fight. The parents want to have a camera in the classroom, which I like the idea, but the school didn't want to have video cameras in the classroom. This is a debate that we've talked about a lot on this show, and we had Richard Stripp, who is the author of Mom, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me at School Today, and we asked him, what would change the way things are, and he said, we need to have video cameras in the classroom, that this nonsense would stop if we had video cameras in the classroom. And I think, it's one of those things I hadn't thought of before, but in this last year with all the things that have happened, both with children on the spectrum and neurotypically, I think we have to look towards that. And it's expensive, but we got to find a way. As parents of special needs kids, we have to find a way. They're not going to find a way. We have to do it. In any case, Mike goes on and says, about the video cameras in the classroom, I don't know what happened with this. The second story, you were talking about it yesterday. I just want to give my thoughts. It's awful that the boy needs to learn a new way to say his name, his own name in a different way. Of course, we're talking about the little boy yesterday, Hunter, Spanger, who is in Nebraska, who is 3 years old and has gone off to preschool, and he has an SEE, signing exact English language sign, that it's his name and it's his fingers crossed like this and he goes like this, and he's been asked to say his name in a different way because it resembles a gun. Okay, so this is what Mike is talking about here. And Mike says, I just want to give my thoughts. It's awful that the boy needs to learn to say his own name in a different way. This happened to me. When I go to the bathroom, I do this, and of course we can't see what the gesture is, but the gesture that Mike does for going to the bathroom, one of my old teachers thought I was giving her the finger. Now, I didn't care for her anyway, but I didn't do that. Now the little boy needs to change his name. By the way, he's 3. So I'm guessing that Mike had to change the way in which he was saying he had to go to the bathroom, which just is absolutely unthinkable to me. But in any case, Mike goes on, he says, I want to talk about my children's book for children with a disability. The idea came about, I wanted to write something for my old teacher. Her name is Mrs. Kramer. Now, I'm sure that your son and everyone who is watching this have or had a special teacher. I sure hope so. I have 2 special teachers in my own life. Mrs. Kramer is one. If we have the time after my speech, I will talk about her, and definitely when we do have a chance to interview you, Mike, we'll talk about that. Her and Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Tate, she is my aide. She did everything to help me, so I wanted to write this book for her. I brought her my book in 2007, but it wasn't printed until 2010. It is called My School Journey, The Many Things I Have Learned. In this book, I talk about many things like what to do to learn in each grade. By the way, if I missed anything, please take time to talk about it with your child. I talk about all of the drills. You don't need to be scared of them, like fire drills and things, I'm assuming. I talk about their feelings a lot. Because I feel this was important to talk about, you can buy my book at my website. My website address is, you ready? www.livingwithdisability, all spelled out, .webstarts.com. So that's www.livingwithdisability, all spelled out, .webstarts, with an S on the end, .com. You can look around my website also. It is on Facebook under Living with a Disability AAC. I want to finish up by talking about my communication device. The power of a communication device is awesome for everyone. Now for the $6,000 question, how old you need to be to start using a communication device and how you need to get started. I'm going to answer that in real time because I want you to see how long it will take me using my communication device. And remember, I've been using a communication device for 12 years, so I'm quick. So we'll look forward to, we need to get it set up so that when Mike is talking to us that we'll be able to hear him on his device on Skype, because we want you to get the benefit of being able to hear what Mike has to say. My understanding is that Mike is a high school senior this year. A remarkable young man, as he said, with CP, cerebral palsy, and I think what a wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to someone about using communication devices who has found his way using the communication device and has been using it since he was the age of 12. So Mike, we thank you so much for hanging in with us. We're going to get you on the show one way or the other. We're going to work it out. And we appreciate this information, and hopefully people will start to take a look at your website, www.livingwithdisability.webstarts with an S on the end.com, and also your Facebook page, Living with a Disability AAC, and his name is Mike Hipple. So thank you, Mike, for sharing that with us. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and my understanding is that we're going to talk about perspective taking and how we teach this from point A to Z, and he'll share some of the research about perspective taking. Stick with us.
My wife, Lori Frost, and I developed PECS over 25 years ago. The idea was to help very young children with autism and other disabilities be able to learn how to functionally communicate, that is, interact with other people. There had been a lot of work on picture-based systems then, but they all involved teaching children to point to pictures. And a lot of children with autism would interact with the picture but continue to ignore the people around them. So the simple idea in the beginning was to motivate the child to want something, figure out what does he really like. It could be something to eat, something to play with, something to do. And then teach him, instead of grabbing for that thing, pick up that one picture in front of you, hand it to the nice person next to you, and they'll give you what you want. And that was the very beginning of PECS. Everyone has that fear about either interfering with speech or blocking the development of speech using picture systems, PECS, or even sign language. The reality is people have looked for that problem for over 40 years, and no one has found any evidence of it. So when I speak to parents, I don't even wait for them to tell me what they're afraid of. I tell them I know what you're afraid of. But many other people have had the same fear. So we've looked for this very, very carefully. And the problem, especially in autism, is not that the child can't speak, is that he doesn't communicate. He doesn't interact with other people to get things done. We're often like furniture. So if I'm holding candy, great, I can take the candy out of your hand. But if the candy is on top of the table and I can't reach it, I'm just going to keep trying to climb on the table. I'm not going to turn to mom and look at her and look at the candy and point, or I'm just going to deal with that candy in and of itself. So the whole point about PECS is, no, people are important. You have to interact with people. Gives them lots of chances to then be near us, listen to what we're saying, practice making sounds, putting sounds together. There are a lot of skills that are needed to get speech going. It's not just one day the kid's going to look and say, thanks, Mom, you've been great. You know, it comes in really slowly for typically developing children. We don't think of it that way because we don't notice how much teaching we're doing with typical children. It seems natural. But research shows that by the time a typical child's about 2 years old, they've practiced using their voice about 1 million to 1.5 million times. That's a lot of work. So with PECS, especially for the younger children, we need to get that interaction going. Of course, we're going to work on everything that gets speech going. The reality is, though, some children never develop speech, and we don't know why. Anyone who guarantees that I'm going to make your non-speaking child talk in 6 months or a year, they're not being ethical, because they cannot make that guarantee. We watched, over 80 children in the Delaware public school system learning PECS when they were younger than 5 years old, and the vast majority of them acquired speech. And the ones who were acquiring speech eventually developed just as much speech as the kids who had some speech coming in. They had the same kind of outcomes. Same number of kids went on to regular school who had a little bit of speech coming in versus had none and started on PECS. So again, learning to use PECS never interfered with acquiring speech or making that tremendous academic gain that a lot of us would like to look.
And in the meantime, when you get the functional communication skills going, the payoff is that you get less challenging behavior and the ability to work on more things, right?
Yes, I mean, that's been like a freebie. Yeah. Obviously we need to sometimes do a functional assessment to figure out why is he doing that. But there's also studies showing that just teaching functional communication with PECS leads to improved performance. It's not magic. Doesn't happen for everything.
It feels magic to parents.
Oh, it does. And it feels that way. Hey, it doesn't hurt as much either.
Right.
We know everybody likes technology, and technology can be beneficial. So everybody wants an iPad. It's really cool. The risk, of course, is that some children with autism will learn how to play with an iPad and then be more isolated. So our concern is to make sure that any kind of app for an iPad uses the same principles that we've built into PECS. So the first app that we have for an iPad that's going to come out this summer is just designed to help with discrimination. It will not be a full communication system, but sometimes children have trouble with choosing an apple versus sock. And one of the critical issues for effective learning is feedback, getting quick feedback. The nice thing about an iPad is we've essentially programmed the device that as soon as the child touches the right picture, it lights up, it grows bigger, it says a word, so it gives them immediate feedback like, yeah, you've done something really good. Of course, we follow through with giving them the item, but the device is quicker than anybody can be. So then probably in the fall sometime we'll come up with an app that it's more comprehensive, but it's really designed for children who already have some sentence structure and beyond. That is, there's no research showing that using any of these devices leads to quicker initial acquisition of vocabulary, but it certainly helps with the expansion of vocabulary for some kids. Go to PECS.com. You can get to the U.S. company there. We have offices in 13 countries and around the world, so if people speak another language, they can just go find the language of their choice and probably get to a company that's speaking that language too.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and it's Friday, so we are joined by our very special guest, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. You are the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and you are also the director of the Autism Research Group. Is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
So fabulous to have you here. We have a little bit of unfinished business from the last segment, if you don't mind, that I'm going to address because some people wrote in some responses. We were talking, and I talked with you briefly during the break about the 3-year-old who started preschool and is signing his name Hunter and has been asked to change his name. And somebody, the way he signs his name, somebody wrote in and said, would you ask a typical child to change his name if when it was spoken it sounded like gun in a foreign language that the teacher spoke? Of course not. The teacher would learn what the name meant and not think it meant gun. In the deaf community, each person makes up a sign for their own name. It's horribly offensive to suggest that they should change it. I completely agree. Emily, our technical director, was just sharing with us during the break what a big deal in the deaf community it is to be given your name, that it is individual to you, that it's like a rite of passage, and that for somebody to suggest in any way that you, regardless of the reason, but on top of that, I'm sorry, the way he is signing his name, the fact that you could think that that was a gun, seriously, I want to know where their head is at. So thank you for writing that in. I think we're all in agreement. If you go to our Autism Live Facebook page, there is a link that you can go to sign a petition to say, please allow this child to sign his name the way he has learned it. You can find it there on our Facebook page. We appreciate you going there. You'll have to push the link and go and sign the petition. I'm sure that they've already topped the petitions that they need to have, but you know, it can't hurt. And of course, the family has asked that they appreciate all the support that they're getting, and has asked that everybody stay polite while talking to the school district, that they only are supporting polite comments to the school district, which is really generous and mindful while they're going through this difficult time. So in any case, thank you for letting us address that. But we've asked you to come in today. We started a conversation here yesterday about perspective taking.
Okay.
And I said, you know, we need to get Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in here to talk about this, because people were asking, are there places on YouTube where we can go and see children being taught so that they can figure out how to do this? We're talking about on skills, that there's a set of lessons, but you know, sometimes it's hard, even in skills, you see the little individual lessons. I'd like to talk about the whole, A to Z, how do we teach perspective taking to children? And maybe if you can give us, for those who were just joining us and weren't here yesterday, a little background on why we need to teach perspective taking to our kids.
Sure. Okay. So perspective taking is sort of a huge, broad, you know, idea and term, and includes a lot of different things. So it's kind of hard to wrap it all up into one little segment like this, but
we'll take that into consideration.
Right. But some terms that some of your viewers might be familiar with are theory of mind, which comes out of developmental and cognitive psychology. Basically, it means the ability to understand other people's mental states, and to use that understanding to be more effective socially and more successful socially. So, for example, if I understand what you're thinking about, or what you already know, or what you intend, and I alter my own behavior based on that understanding, I'm going to be more successful. So, for example, if you already know something, I shouldn't tell you.
Right.
If you were doing something intentionally, but then I treat it as though it was unintentional, or vice versa, that's going to be weird, right? It's not going to work socially. So perspective taking deals with understanding other people's mental states, or in behavioral terminology we call it private events, but things going on inside your mind, what you're thinking about, how you feel, what you're imagining, dreaming, planning, things like that. It's a very, very broad repertoire of behavior, a huge skill set, starting with the very simplest stuff of, you know, even just attending to what someone else is looking at. So if you're looking at that wall, maybe I look at that wall too. It's called joint attention. Sharing attention to something with someone else. And then starting with basic stuff like that, you know, as young as maybe 2 years old or less, and then advancing all the way up to really complex things like me predicting what I should do in the future based on the impact that it's going to have on you and your emotions, and what that will then do to your future behavior, to someone else or to me, right? So you know, let's say, for my girlfriend, should I buy her flowers? Should I write her a poem? Should I make her a card? You know, and the ability to figure all of those things out with respect to someone else, not yourself.
Right.
Okay.
It's a huge skill set, and of course we could all be better at it.
That's right. Absolutely.
So it's not just something that we can talk about with autism, but what we see with autism is that there is a particular deficit in this area that can be profound.
That's right. And in fact, it's interesting because a lot of folks say, oh, well, yeah, all that theory of mind stuff or all that perspective-taking stuff is, you know, they're making too big of a deal out of it. It's not, you know, some people in the whole theory of mind camp believe that it's the root cause of all autism, which that really doesn't make sense. That is overblowing the, you know, the importance of it for sure. But there is some good research to show that deficits in perspective taking are larger in the population of folks on the spectrum than other folks, even when you control for things like language, intelligence. So, you know, I know plenty of folks on the spectrum who are brilliant, geniuses. So there's no deficit in language, no deficit in intelligence, right? They're super brilliant, but still they don't understand the simplest forms of perspective taking or social understanding. So whereas even maybe a 3 to 5 year old would be sensitive to where someone else is coming from in their interactions with them, this 20-year-old genius literally won't even see it and will just stomp all over other people's feelings literally without noticing it. It's not because they don't care. That's not it. It's they literally, it's just not part of their universe.
Right.
And that's a learned behavior, you know. It's not, I mean, people think of it as sort of a mental ability or a brain function or something like that, and of course the brain's involved. But like everything else we do on a daily basis, it's a learned ability. And if you don't learn it, you're not going to be able to do it. And it just so happens that a lot of folks on the spectrum, not all, obviously, but a lot of folks on the spectrum have a particular difficulty with perspective taking. It just doesn't necessarily develop on its own without specialized intervention.
Yeah, I'm not somebody who watches The Big Bang Theory. I hadn't ever seen an episode. But somebody had said to me, you need to watch this show, because one of the running jokes in the show is that one of the genius guys has the inability to take perspective of other people, and it's a running joke in the show that somebody will say something to him and he says, yes, but I don't feel that way, and he continues on and it's hysterical. And they put it in a comedy context. So, you know, if you watch The Big Bang Theory, this is exactly what we're talking about. But for our kids, it's not so funny. It's not funny, It's not the big comedy thing.
And for adults too, it's not funny at all when it results in not being able to maintain a friendship or not being able to maintain an intimate relationship.
Absolutely.
And really, frankly, not even being able to function at work. No one wants to work with you if you don't, if you're not sensitive to where they're coming from.
Absolutely, absolutely. So success in life, and this can be far-ranging from the kinds of things you're talking about. But we see as parents sometimes that something will happen in a certain context, and you look at your child and they're having the wrong reaction in the moment. Maybe somebody is crying and upset, and they're just totally on another planet or whatever.
Well, a classic example is someone, you know, a peer falls down and gets hurt and is crying, and the child on the spectrum sees the person fall down, and it looks kind of funny. It's like a Three Stooges type thing, and so the kid on the spectrum is laughing. And you know, it is maybe kind of funny the way the person fell down, but it's not funny to laugh when the person's crying.
There's no taking
the other person's perspective. It's just, what does it look like to me? It looks funny. Not how does it feel to them? They're in pain, therefore I shouldn't laugh.
And it leads to frustration on our part, and sometimes fear and anxiety about, you know, how they're going to progress in life. But you literally want to take a hold of them and go, why can't you get this? And I think if we begin to understand that, first of all, it is a true deficit. And like you said, it's not that they don't care, it's that they're putting their information through a computer that is not coming up with the same answers as us. They're not filtering it through the same things. That first, if we look at that and understand that, but then realize we could teach them.
Right, exactly. And that's, honestly, that's the major piece that's missing in almost all autism treatment, autism research on theory of mind and perspective taking, is the part where you actually do something about it. So there are literally hundreds of studies now on theory of mind and autism showing, look, people with autism have a hard time with this. And then that's where the study ends. So there we go, got my publication, you know, science, great, you know, but now what, you know? And so for parents and for kids on the spectrum and adults, yeah, great, you can say that I have a problem, but that's not what matters. What matters is actually doing something about it.
And I have to say that there's a young man that I'm friends with on Facebook who's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, who literally posed this question last week to all of his friends and family and said, I'm struggling with a couple of things and I need some help. And we see that with a lot of our teenagers on that they begin to realize, okay, I have a deficit here, where do I go, what do I do? So we're going to take some of that on, right? Let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about, even with our small children, how we can start to teach this, but how we can teach this to teenagers and adults as well. Stick with us.
Biggest predictor of whether or not a child has a feeding disorder is chronic lengthy meals. So if a meal is lasting more than 30 minutes, that's a red flag. Also, if the mealtime is disruptive to the family, if it's aversive to the family, it's not a pleasant environment, then that also raises a red flag that maybe they might want to seek help.
What kinds of things do you do when you have a child who has a texture issue?
Right. Different things. Some children don't have the skill set to actually chew and swallow solid foods. So if we have children that are averse to different textures because they don't have the skills, then it's a lot of skill acquisition around that. For children with autism, sometimes we see particular sensitivities to texture, or only wanting to eat crunchy foods or foods of a certain color, and that is generally more of a behavioral issue. So the treatment for that would be different. So it's not necessarily a skill deficit as it is resistance.
For parents who really want some hope that if they get some help, what's the likelihood that they'll see some improvement?
Right. I think it depends on the child's history, how soon they get in. But every child is different. Some children take longer than others, and that depends on the nature of their feeding disorder, how long it's been, and things like that. So, but I mean, we continue to try things until we find something that does work.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here right now with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who is the director of the Autism Research Group, and you are also the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
That's correct.
And we've asked you to come today to talk about perspective taking. We just gave a little bit of an explanation about perspective taking, what it is, why it's important to our kids on the spectrum. But now we want to get into the nuts and bolts of how do we go about teaching this. And this is really cutting edge stuff right here, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, I don't like to brag, but yeah, we have actually been working on developing a line of research on perspective taking for several years, and it's not easy, I have to say. It's not sort of your typical ABA research that's fairly straightforward, where it's pretty obvious what the context is, and it's pretty obvious what the behavior is that needs to occur there, and you teach it and get it to occur more, and you're done. Perspective taking is so much more complex. There's just so many different things going on. And, you know, it's hard to carve out one little piece of it and say, this is, you know, what we're going to do research on, because it's a huge repertoire. Like we've been saying, you know, it starts developing around probably 2 or beforehand in terms of the prerequisites, and you're probably not done with it, and you know, until, I don't know, 10, 12, maybe older in typical development. So, so it's really complex. But yeah, we have been working on developing a whole line of research on it.
And we should go back and say that you've been working on these kinds of lessons and teaching perspective taking for decades now at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. That my son, when he was going through therapy, we're still working on some perspective taking, but he's made huge, giant leaps so that he does take other people's perspectives, sometimes more than his neurotypical peers, which is a fascinating thing, because he is learning to. But for people at home who are watching this who've never done anything, how do we start to teach this?
Okay. Well, you know, it's interesting because with simpler skills in ABA or in sports especially, people understand the idea that what you need is lots of practice with immediate feedback, okay? And like if you're learning to shoot a basket in basketball, everyone knows that. No one would deny that. What do? You go practice a lot, right? And then with simple skills like learning object labels or something like that, everyone agrees like, yeah, okay, you need lots of practice with immediate feedback, right? But then when it starts to get into more complex cognitive skills like understanding someone else's mental states, somehow all that goes out the window, and people think like, oh, well, you know, it's more about just thinking about it or talking about it or something like that. No, it's like anything else. If you want to get good at it, you need lots and lots of practice with immediate feedback. Not rote rehearsal. I'm not talking about that. Not repeating the same thing over and over, but lots. If you want to get good at anything, you got to practice it a lot. So we start with the simplest stuff, and we arrange for lots of practice, lots of opportunities for practice across lots of different examples in different settings, and doing it loosely in different ways, so not rote repetition by any means, but then immediate feedback. So, you know, you start with really simple stuff like identifying what someone else is looking at or what someone else can see and how that's different from what you can see. So, for example, we might put something on the wall behind you and put something on the wall behind me, and they'd be two different things. And well, first of all, the kid has to know pronouns. That's the number one thing. That's like the contextual cue that controls all of this perspective taking. So first your kid's got to learn I versus you, he versus you, she versus you, and be able to use those, you know, in a generalized way, not just kind of memorizing, but like actually being able to switch them,
which is sometimes a difficult task for our kids on the spectrum.
That's right. In fact, there's good research to show that pronoun reversal in itself is a major area of deficit for folks on the spectrum. So you got to master that first, okay? And then you start bringing in content to those pronouns. So what do I see versus what do you see? Okay. So again, we have different things behind us, and you just do lots of practice. So you would do this with lots of different pictures hung on the wall, and then you do it in lots of different rooms, and you do it with lots of different therapists. So it's not just always you and the kid; it's dad and the kid, nanny and the kid, grandma and the kid, therapist one and the kid, therapist two. You know, every different room in the house. Then you do it at McDonald's. Then you do it at the playground. You know, and it really is like that. You know, lots and lots of practice, lots of examples, lots of different settings, and you don't always say it the same way. So you don't say, "What do I see? What do you see?" No, obviously, right? The good ABA doesn't look like that.
Right.
So, okay, what do you see? Great. What do I see? What are you looking at? What am I looking at? What's over there? What's over here? Okay.
Right.
And as you start to get, and what you're looking for is generalization to new, untaught examples. That's the number one thing.
And again, for generalization, a brief example of a brief explanation of generalization, because it hasn't been our jargon term for a while.
Sure.
We did talk about it a little bit today, but
so it kind of goes back to a common sense principle, which is if you're teaching someone something and all they can do is puke back exactly what you taught them, they don't really get it. Right? It's common sense. That's why when you take a test, a well-designed test, it doesn't just ask you exactly what you learned, it asks you for new examples. It asks you to provide new examples of a concept. And if you can provide a new example of a concept and no one's taught you that example in the past, it demonstrates that you actually get the concept.
It's really your skill at that point.
You're applying that skill to new examples, to new settings and situations. So it's exactly the same thing with our kids when we're teaching them. So let's say, we teach you to identify what's behind you versus what do I see versus what do you see with, animals, vehicles, and vegetables or something. Then the next day, if we think the kid's mastering it, then we put other stuff up that's not animals, vehicles, or vegetables, right? And we also test it in different settings that were never included in training. So we go to a different room or something like that. We do it sitting on the floor rather than sitting at the table or sitting on the couch. We do it with, I'm looking at a screen and you're looking at a different screen, maybe two different, laptops or whatever. The point is we're changing everything about the teaching situation. And yet still probing the same concept. And if the child can demonstrate that, they can do it, they can apply that concept to new, untaught situations or examples or stimuli, then that's it. That demonstrates generalization.
It's absolutely fascinating, and I think your example was great because we've been talking about wide range of ages here, that you can be doing that kind of thing with a kid that's a little bit older and has more of those prerequisites. And I remember when we were working with my son, he was very young. Like, you guys would be shocked about how young they started to do these kinds of things. There are lessons and skills about sensory perspective taking. And I remember very distinctly after he learned the senses, because that, of course, he had to learn what his own senses were to identify, oh, I see this, I smell this, I hear this. And then he worked on pronouns. And then we had this whiteboard that was taped together that would sit on the table, and something would be on one side or the other. I remember it was a lemon to start out with. And they would sit on one side with him and say, Jem, what do you see? And he would say, I see a lemon. And they would say, can Mom see the lemon? And at first he would say, yeah. Even though clearly I couldn't. He could see it, so of course Mom could see it. And I can remember Peter Farrag getting him up, walking him around to sit where I was on my lap and saying, now, can Mom see it from where she is? No, she can't see it. And then bringing him back around, showing him the lemon. Okay, Jem, can you see the lemon? Yes. Can Mom see the lemon? Yes. Walk back around. Can she see the lemon? No. Then back around until eventually he said, no, she can't see the lemon. And then they would say to him, why not? Because this white thing is in the way and Mom can't see it from her. And you could see the little connections
light bulbs start to go off.
To be made.
But what you need is, I'm glad you brought up this example, is you need lots of different practice across a lot of different examples. So I'm sure you noticed they weren't always doing a lemon.
Oh, no.
They weren't always
and it wasn't
just
always
doing
at
a
the table.
whiteboard, and it wasn't always at a table. It's lots and lots of different examples that all require the child to apply the same concept, right? But everything about the situation is different.
Oh, totally.
And so, that's what it requires.
We'd be at the grocery store, and Peter and Jem would be looking at something, and Peter would say, oh, did you just hear the loudspeaker? Can Mom hear the loudspeaker? We'd be everywhere, and they'd be applying it to every single sense.
Every different sense.
Everywhere. And with other people, does Dad's at work. Did Dad hear the loudspeaker? No. How
Why not?
come?
Because he's at work.
Because he's at work, and he would have to give a reason why he couldn't.
Exactly.
It was absolutely amazing. And can I tell you how many hundreds of times that we did that over and over and over again? And I saw the connections being made, but the first first time that I really saw him generalize and in a circumstance really get it, it was amazing to me.
It's cool.
And it took a while.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very complex skill. It's not something that's easy to learn overnight. But the important point here is it is a skill.
Yes.
It's a learned skill, just like anything else.
Yes.
And so, you know, it requires practice, and it requires systematic, repeated practice.
Yes.
Again, not rote responding, not memorization of scripts, nothing like that, but lots of practice.
And I see now that as he gets older and he's in different social situations, that sometimes he'll miss a cue or miss a step or something, and we have to go back and work on it within that context. So he did generalize it within certain contexts, but he doesn't have it completely in all contexts yet.
Which, that also is totally normal. You know, not everyone can generalize every skill to every situation. You know, everyone's, you know, but it does, but if you want, the more generalization you want to occur, the more practice you have to have across a larger variety of teaching settings and examples and all of that stuff. But all of this stuff, what it boils down to is teaching a form of reasoning, essentially, a form of thinking and figuring out to the child. And what their reasoning is how they are different from other people and how they are similar to other people. How am I different and how am I the same and how am I similar from someone else, and what they're thinking and what they see and feel and blah, blah, blah.
Which is fascinating stuff. All right, we have to take a break, but when we come back, I want to go back and talk about how we teach the pronoun, being able to switch the pronouns, because if that's a precursor, I think that's a part of the perspective taking that's essential. So we're going to ask you about that. So stick with us. We're going to be back more with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox after these messages.
Just go like this. Can you see me? Puedes mirarme aquí? Okay. Hi, I'm Rebecca Ishida. Say hi, Ethan. Hi. My son was diagnosed with autism in November 2004. With Ethan, almost immediately, we noticed things that were troublesome, that he just didn't sleep. He would vomit in the crib. There were a lot of sensory issues.
Then he'd have like 20 of the trains lined up, and if you came in and took one train out, just meltdown completely. Guttural instinct is to think that there's nothing wrong. Who wants to look at their child and go, there's something wrong with that child? You don't. You always want to see the best in your child.
Will my kid be able to go to school? Will he interact with his peers? Will he be able to have a healthy relationship? Will he get married? I really thought that autism was like a death sentence. A lot of hope was given to me through CARD. This was my third agency, and the best agency we had. And there was no way in the world I was going to give up CARD because of the gains I saw Ethan was having.
Yeah, you did it!
And I remember when Doreen saw us for the evaluation, she says, but by the time he's 6, he will be recovered. And that's exactly what happened.
I'll fix that.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And our special guest right now is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and he is also the director of the Autism Research Group, an amazing group that I love that you guys, all your research is driven by kinds of things that parents would want to know the answer to.
That's right. That's sort of our central mission, is addressing research questions that will make a real life difference in the everyday lives of families.
Which is incredible. And we've been talking about perspective taking today, and one of the things that we were talking about in the last segment is that there are prerequisites before we get into real hardcore perspective taking that our kids have to know, and they have a measure of perspective taking them as well. I'm talking about pronouns. That we see a lot of times on the spectrum. We have individuals who have a really hard time reversing the pronoun.
That's right.
And for me, it's even difficult to explain what it is because it's hard
really
to explain, and it's frustrating, and to be able to teach that. So talk to us a little bit about what the pronoun reversal is, what the deficit is, and how we go about it.
Sure. Okay. Well, first of all, I'll say
I know that's a huge thing.
teaching pronouns and pronoun reversal is probably among my least favorite things to teach because it's hard. It's hard for the kids. It's hard for the kids to learn. It's hard for the therapists and teachers to teach. It's very, very frustrating, but it is a prerequisite for pretty much all perspective taking and social understanding, because so much of what we do in perspective taking is driven by our language and our ability to talk about our perspective versus someone else's. So if you don't have pronouns, you basically can't do that, essentially. So it's really,
what is the pronoun reversal? What's the deficit?
So it's like this. A lot of kids on the spectrum, and adults actually, can have a tough time with describing something using accurate pronouns, where those pronouns reverse depending on perspective. So for example, if you and I are hanging out and you have something and I have something else, I might use the wrong pronoun to refer to it. So when I say, let's say I have a block and you have a doll, and I say my block, and I should say your doll if I'm referring to that one, they might not use the right pronoun. They might get them confused, or they might just not use pronouns at all in that situation. In other words, these kids haven't necessarily learned how the the whole reversal thing is when you're then talking to me. When you say the word my, it refers to the doll, right? But when I say the word my, it refers to the block. So my, when I say it, refers to this thing over here. When you say that exact same word, it refers to that thing over there. Most things aren't like that in life. Most things in our environment just are what they are. So the table is always the table. It doesn't matter whether you're standing over there or you're standing over here, right? But pronouns are different, and so they reverse depending on who's doing the talking and who's doing the listening. And so what you'll see is a lot of folks on the spectrum don't necessarily learn correct usage or the ability to reverse pronouns back and forth, like my versus your, or me versus he, or I versus you, and use those pronouns expressively in a way that makes sense to other folks, and or understand those pronouns when someone else uses them. So it's very tricky.
We see a lot of times, you know, my son lost most of his language, so we didn't see as much of that with him, but a lot of times there'll be kids on the spectrum who have language, and you'll say to them, do you want to go to the store? And they say, yes, you want to go to the store, instead of, yes, I want to go to the store.
Exactly, that's a much more concrete example.
And, well, but it's something that I see. You know, all the other things I go, oh gosh, I never thought about that. So if that's something that you're seeing at home in your house, it's that pronoun reversal. And I think when kids do that, and I think I've seen kids that are typically developing do that for a short period of time, but then they very quickly get it.
Right, it's a normal part of normal language learning is making little mistakes all the time and overgeneralizing one thing that you learn to something else. That's totally typical. And then through the course of just regular language development, if you'll notice, when a typical kid does something like that, somebody corrects them. And, you know, just so happens, learning happens a little faster in the typical population. Lucky for us, I guess. But, you know, a typically developing kid, you correct them once or twice, and then maybe they don't make that mistake again, or they make it a few more times, they get corrected a few more times, and then it just kind of disappears. Well, what that means is they're sensitive to those consequences of being corrected. And it only takes a couple of those to get the kid back on track. A lot of folks on the spectrum just require more learning opportunities to learn the same thing.
But we need to be active about it. It's not one of those things. There's been a lot of discussion this week about people, doctors and developmental pediatricians saying, wait it out. And this is not one of those things we ever want to wait out. If you see your child isn't making that pronoun reversal, you want to start working on this as soon as possible.
And you know, there's nothing special about pronoun reversal and perspective taking. That goes with anything that humans do. If you want your son to be a genius piano player, you better start piano early and do it a lot, right? If you want to be great at speaking a second language, you better start learning that early and do it a lot. And so it's exactly the same with kids on the spectrum. It just so happens that maybe they need to work even harder to learn the same stuff. So yeah, it emphasizes you need to start even earlier and work on it probably even more.
And you guys know that my key thing is, because when we hear early, I think a lot of us get into guilt about, oh, my child's 9 and I didn't start that already. Early means now. Just early means now.
That's a really good point. Yeah, so beating yourself up over what you should have done doesn't matter.
Well, I'm queen of that. And I think we all of us who have children on the spectrum go, oh, I should have done this well, you know? Early means now. And we can waste more time now worrying about what we should have done last week, or we could just get down to the action. So early means
should have, would have doesn't get you anywhere. It's about
I live in that neighborhood.
Well, everyone, we all do.
And then I have to remind myself, I just wasted 5 minutes on that. 5 minutes, and it was now. Now is 5 minutes later, so now.
What matters is making a commitment to an action that you value.
Yeah,
and do it.
And it always feels better once you're moving in a direction.
That's right.
Always feels better. Okay, so back to how we then teach these pronouns, because this is a I know, it's everybody's. Well, and then I'm going to talk about prepositions, which that's a whole other.
Yeah. Pronouns are even worse because a lot of the way that we teach successfully in ABA programs for kids with autism is by using modeling prompts. But modeling doesn't work with pronouns because by definition it's reversed, right? So when your teacher says my, it's not the same thing as you saying my. It's the opposite. It means the teacher's thing, not your thing, right?
So do we need a third person when we're doing this to prompt?
Sometimes we use third people. A lot of times we don't have third person available. Sometimes you actually use written prompts, visual prompts.
A textual
prompt. So, so for example, textual prompt. Good job.
Well, no, you know what's funny is that here I was giving the jargon, you were giving it without the jargon, and I was just linking the jargon to it.
Very good.
But I appreciate that you didn't give us the jargon. We always appreciate that, don't we?
And so what we might do is things like this, like we're teaching a child to discriminate between I and you. So, so to say, for example, I'm wearing a gray shirt, you're wearing a blue shirt or a black cardigan or whatever, okay? And so what we might do to teach that ability is to start with visual prompts of some kind where, actually you'd start with like a written prompt where you hold up the capital letter I and teach the kid to say I when they see that, if they don't already know how to do that. Then the written word Y-O-U, teach the kid to say you, if they don't already know how to do that. And these can be sight words. It doesn't matter if they're actually phonetically reading them yet, because we're not teaching reading. We're just trying to get a visual prompt that will be helpful for teaching. So once the kid can say I versus you can then stick those visual prompts on the child and the teacher. So on the child, they have the one that says I, and then you stick the you on the teacher. Okay, and so you might ask the kid, what color shirt am I wearing? And now right there it's reversed already, right? Because I means if the kid's thinking, right? So then the kid looks at you and sees the word you and says you, right? And then you, blue shirt. You're wearing a blue shirt, okay?
So it's like putting a billboard to remind them this is what you want to, despite what I said, this is what you want to say.
Don't imitate me, just read the thing on my shirt. And then of course, like any prompt, you have to fade it out. So there's different ways you could do that. You can fade out you could actually like fade out the ink so it's harder to read very, very gradually. You can fade the size so it gets smaller and smaller until it's too small of a font for the child to read. You can fade it out with a time delay so you can not have it at first and then present the instruction, what color shirt or whatever, and then if the kid doesn't respond immediately, then you put the you there, right? And then when that works, then you put a 2-second delay, then a 3-second delay like that until the child doesn't need it. There's a lot of different ways to fade out prompts. That isn't really specific to pronouns. That is just what we do in ABA.
So, okay, great. I think that's a wonderful, because it gets confusing. It absolutely gets confusing. Be patient with yourself.
Doesn't work,
and be patient with your child. Absolutely.
And like anything else, if the kid's making a bunch of errors, what you're doing is not the right procedure. Figure out a different prompt that will help your child be successful right away. And then figure out how to fade out the prompt.
And I love what you just said, because that's the thing that I learn from you guys all the time, is that you have a plan and you are specific with your plan and you start out. But if the child isn't learning, it doesn't mean the child's wrong. It means that something that you're doing needs to be changed so that you can get to the learning. But in no part of that equation do you assume that they can't learn it.
No. In fact, in ABA, we say the student is always right, which, that's not to denigrate teachers or to denigrate us in any way, but it just means it's our job to arrange the environment so that the student learns, period. And if the student isn't learning, we're not doing the right thing, so we're going to try something different.
But that's such a breath of fresh air.
It's different from the way most people look at developmental disabilities,
well, even from how we tend to look at our children, because it's like, what is wrong that you're not learning this, instead of what can I do to make sure that you do learn this?
And if folks have a tough time with that, you can try like an engineering metaphor or analogy, and it might be helpful. So let's say you're trying to build a bridge and the bridge keeps falling down. You'd never blame the bridge, right? You'd never say, stupid bridge, you should be able to stand up. You'd say, nope, I'm using the wrong size bolts or the wrong metal or the wrong concrete or whatever. Obviously, right? It's not the bridge.
Okay, fascinating, wonderful. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then I'm going to ask you to take on prepositions. I know, just putting you through the mill here today, aren't I? Because prepositions are a really hard thing. It's one of the hugest areas of the curriculum because there's so much to be done there, because it does involve perspective taking. So stick with us. More with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox when we come back.
My name is Michael McNemy, and I live on Staten Island. I love hearing myself on the radio. Every Thursday I'm on. It's energetic. It's fantastic. I love the radio show more than a kid loves chocolate cake. I got a lot of followers on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. This job makes me feel important. This job makes me feel like I have a purpose. Like they believe that I'm capable of handling such big responsibilities, and I like that a lot. Why is it important for people with disability and special needs to be given the same experiences that a normal functioning person would? We're all capable and can do the same job. It's just the pace we do it in. Some of us need extra assistance. Even Bill Gates can't do some things on his own. He's a trillionaire. Just a little extra support goes a long way.
Visit autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're here right now with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. We've been talking about perspective taking and all its different forms, and of course it's a huge topic that we can't just talk about in small increments, but we're trying anyway. And we've talked about why perspective taking is so important, how we can begin to teach perspective taking. We were just talking about pronouns and pronoun reversal, and I said I was going to come back and torture you about prepositions because this is a huge area. And I think for a lot of kids, when in the language arena, this takes a little bit of a time because not only there are all the labels, but there is an element of perspective taking to prepositions.
There is, yeah, and it's kind of relative. It's not absolute, right?
Yeah.
Like under versus over depends on where you're standing, right? So you could be under the table, but I'm still over the ground, right?
Right.
And you could be, I'm maybe in front of you, but you're in front of me, and so yeah, prepositions can be very challenging. So usually what we do is we start with something really simple where you have, like let's say you wanted to do in front and behind. You want to teach, and essentially for your audience, if for a little bit of background, what we're trying to do is literally teach the child to understand the meaning of those words, and teach the child to use those words to describe the environment, right? So we're talking about starting with a child who literally doesn't understand prepositions, okay? So you maybe start with an object that has a very clear front and back. So like a car, or an airplane, something that the child's very familiar with, and that very obviously goes in one direction, okay? And so then you can start by giving the child an object and say, put it in front, or put it behind. So we call this receptive prepositions. And you prompt the child to put it in the correct location and then reinforce, right? Positive reinforcement. And then you do, like everything else, you do lots and lots of practice across lots of different examples. So you don't always do the same train, you don't always do the same airplane, you don't always do the same object that you're putting in front and behind. You switch all of those things up, except for the fact that there always is a front and there always is a back, and you're always saying in front and behind, or in back, whatever you choose to teach first. And you just do lots and lots of examples and lots of practice until the child's able to generalize to new examples that haven't been taught. But that's only the beginning. Then there's lots of other prepositions like over, under, in, out. The important thing here is, with all of these prepositions, is you're not teaching the child to memorize a particular preposition. We basically don't do any memorization in ABA, very, very little, other than maybe like what's your name, for a kid who can't talk at all, for safety reasons, phone number for safety reasons, something like that. But anything else, we're looking for generalization and real concept formation. So, so what we're looking for is not memorization of a particular preposition, but the ability to understand or discriminate in ABA terms between different prepositions that are related. So you never just teach in front. You always teach that at the same time that you're teaching behind. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and that's something I never glommed onto before. Of course, they did that with my child, but I never put that together, that they did those two things together.
Very, very important, because what you'll find is if you only teach one, the kid will memorize that. And then you say, oh, mastered, great. Now you go on to the other one, now let's teach behind, and the kid will memorize that. Okay? And now, if you're not having the child go back and forth between the two ever, what you'll find is they just move from memorizing one thing to memorizing the next. And so then tomorrow, if you ask them to put it in front, they'll just put it in behind, because that was the last thing that they memorized.
Okay, so we talked about mass trialing earlier today, because we were talking about teaching shapes. So, but for prepositions, we never are going to mass trial one thing at a time. It's going to be two things together.
Well, there's some disagreement within different folks in ABA, and I'm not sure that the research is entirely clear. Probably both ways work. For some kids, you probably do want to start by mass trialing one of them, and then move on to randomly rotating between two different prepositions.
Two different things.
But man, you better start that early. You better not do a whole bunch of time mass trialing one and then a whole bunch of time mass trialing another without going to randomly rotating between the two fairly soon. Now, each child's going to be different. If a child has, let's say, a year or two history of learning different discriminations, where you went from mass trial to random rotation over and over and over, the child actually starts to generalize the ability to learn straight from random rotation.
I see.
And so then you don't necessarily have to mass trial everything. So it totally depends on the child and where they're at.
I'm learning here. Good.
And so, yeah, it's always a discrimination between, and so then you do, you know, over, under, over and over and over until they can discriminate between those clearly. Then you maybe want to move on to, once they've mastered several of these and clearly are discriminating and they're generalizing across untrained examples, then maybe you mix them all up. So you get an object that has, you know, maybe you get a table and put an airplane on top of it, and you hand them the ball and say, put it under, and so they have to put it under the table. Now, put it over the airplane, put it in front, put it behind, put it next to, maybe is another one that you work on.
Yes.
So you gradually increase in difficulty. And now, and we've only talked about receptive prepositions too. We haven't started to get to expressive or actually using the language.
Yeah, where is the ball?
Yeah.
And then they have to say it's on top of the airplane.
That's right, that's right.
And that's the expressive side of it. It's a huge set of lessons, but I remember it so well. It's a period of time where I have particular sharp memory of them teaching with my son, and they made it as fun as possible, which was really, I mean, my house was always like this crazy Dr. Seuss contortion thing where, you know, my couch was, the cushions were underneath things and they were on top of things, and there were toys on top of things and next to and beside things. And
another thing you can do is have the reinforcer incorporated into it in some way. So let's say you were using a snack as a reinforcer, like a cracker. You say, put the cracker under, put the cracker over, and when they get it right, they get to eat the cracker. So it kind of builds the reinforcement into it.
Absolutely fascinating.
But yeah, you want to make it fun. That's the most important thing.
And of course, you know, my favorite personal thing is the Dr. Seuss book, Go Dog Go, is the preposition book of all time.
Yeah, exactly. But be careful with books like that. They're not necessarily great for teaching because, again, the kid can just memorize the sequence through the whole book. And I've seen that plenty of times. But they're great for testing generalization, right? So once your kid actually has mastered some of these prepositions, then it couldn't hurt to then start go to the book and see if they can actually apply those skills or those concepts to describing the book.
And if you need stimuli for things about saying, when you get to the expressive, you know, where is the dog? You know, point, or even, I guess, receptive, point to the dog in the box. You've got lots of examples in the Dr. Seuss Go Dog Go, my favorite book of all time.
And you know, eventually, if you want to get to real natural use of prepositions in everyday language, not just the sort of the intensive learning situation, you're looking for pure mans and pure tax, which means real usage, spontaneous usage of the language without a teacher or a parent telling the kid to use it. So like in expressive prepositions, you might say, you know, I might put my hand on top of this and say, where's my hand? And you say, over the mouse or on top of the mouse, right? That's great, but I'm still asking you for that language. So real life usage of prepositions would be more like this. Let's say your kid wants something, but you don't know where to go to get it, and so you ask him, and he says it's on top of the shelf, right? Because he can't reach it. So then you go get it from the shelf and hand it to him. And you can contrive. It's basically like a natural environment training or incidental teaching. You can contrive generalization sessions like that, where you put something out of reach, where they have to use a preposition to get it, or inside of a clear container that they can't open, and so then they're using spontaneously using the preposition to get what they want in life.
And even, you know, we did a series of lessons, and I'm wondering if it was to do with that or something. I remember at one point them blindfolding me, and he had to direct me across the room to something. And there was another time when I wasn't blindfolded where he just had to, I couldn't take a step or do anything. He had to tell me where to go so that I could get to the thing. And he would say, you know, step behind this and next to this, and you have to move over to this, and then on top of that.
The blindfolding, giving directions to someone who's blindfolded is a perspective-taking thing, because what you have to do is look at which way way they're facing and give them directions that make sense to them based on which way they're facing instead of where you're facing. So let's say you're standing on one side of a room and you're giving direction to someone on another side of the room facing a different way. If you tell them turn right, it better be their right, not your right. Does that make sense? Or turn left, or, you know, etc.
Absolutely. Oh, fascinating. Fascinating stuff. Well, I so appreciate that I've learned a lot here, and I want to keep learning about perspective taking because it's a huge area. I know I could be better at perspective taking.
We all could be better, and quite frankly, we all probably know someone we work with that that doesn't have any perspective taking skills, and they'd be more effective in their job if they did.
Yeah, and I also have to remind everybody that there's a wonderful set of lessons. All of the lessons that we've talked about are available in Skills. If that's
all part of the cognition curriculum and Skills.
Yes,
that's
absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to having you back next week.
It's been a pleasure.
And we want to let people know about your website quickly before we have you go.
Absolutely. www.autismresearchgroup.org.
Okay, you still taking surveys?
Yeah, we're still taking a survey. We want to know what types of research parents want us to do the most, what types of research matters to you. Please go to our website, take our survey. It won't take you more than about 5 minutes. You can give us as much or as little detail as you want, and we are using that information on your preferences regarding autism research to design our studies. So that way we're making sure that our research actually matters to the community of parents.
There you go. You got researchers asking you, what do you want research on? Speak loudly to them. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful 3-day weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right, we'll be back after these messages. Stick with us.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the end of a week here. It's been an amazing week from Monday when we were at the golf course for the 6th Annual Golf Charity Classic that raised money for Autism Care and Treatment's Military Family Initiative, to today being here with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. We're going to be on a 3-day weekend because it's Labor Day on Monday, so we won't be here on Monday. But we will be here on Tuesday, and we'll be starting an hour later. We're going to go to a 2-hour format. We're going to give you the same amount of information, but we're just going to do it quicker. And we're going to see how that goes. It's on a trial basis, and we're looking forward to hearing from you how it works better for you. I want to remind you that as this show ends, our conversation continues forever. And so you can get in touch with us in a lot of different ways to let us know your thoughts, your opinions, your concerns, your suggestions of things that you'd like to have us cover here on the show. Emily's cycling through some of the different ways that you can participate on the show. Whether it's that you have an idea, you'd like to be on the show, you have something that was of value to you that you think would help other parents, if you've got a blog that you want to let us know about, or if you're a parent who's just starting out and you need some information about funding or how to, cope with different things that are happening, we want to hear from you. We want to be useful to you. That's what we're here for. I just want to say to you how privileged I feel to have an opportunity to be here with you on this journey, how much you lift me up. I get to go home and be with my son, and my being here forces me to walk my talk more often than I think I would. Sometimes I still don't get it done, but we're all in that boat, right? So really important that we support each other, and I appreciate your support on this journey, and I hope that we are finding a way to be helpful to you. That is what we want, and if we can, and I've just lost my sound, so I have no idea how much time we have left, but if we can be useful to you, I know that we're going to be more efficient, more effective if you tell us yourselves how we can help you out. So please don't be a shrinking violet. Talk to us. I know a couple of you have written in and said, I really don't want to bother you. You're not bothering me. Let me know. That's what I'm here for, is to hook you up with the information that you want. So, and you'll have the opportunity to watch us over the weekend in all those ways that we just showed you. We'll be back on Tuesday, but until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.